Hey guys, it's Mo from Mo in the Deep End, and I am feeling a little bit better. So, today, what I figured we would do, since we are all in the shenanigans of the take care of my trial, what I thought we would do, since complex regional pain syndrome is kind of, you know, not a very big or known thing, and I happen to have it because, I joined the club, got that t-shirt, and all the things. I figured what I would do is for the first part of the stream, and I was only going to go over the defense opening today by myself. And then I figured I would find a guest host to help me with the douchey hospital opening so that I can have, someone to help me probably tomorrow or some other time to go over that because I am still getting over a flare up, which is one of the things that we were going to talk about in this particular section of the stream. But I figured you're in this trial, you have probably seen the documentary, but like most people, you are like, what the hell is complex regional pain syndrome? And I am your spiritual guide for today. So buckle your seatbelts, put on your thing, because Auntie Mo's going to tell you a thing or two. Now, I'm guessing that all of you put on your little Ask Jeeves, seatbelt and went to your local Google machine. And, good morning, Miami Spice and Sal and Murph's Turf and Eris and all of you. So, what I figured we would do is kind of go over kind of my stuff. You guys could ask questions. I could kind of tell you my treatment plan thus far and kind of go over what complex regional pain syndrome is because again, it's not that widely known. It's not that understood. I can answer you guys' questions to the best of my ability because it is kind of person to person. Not everyone's going to have exactly the same experiences. I have photos. Now they are feet photos. God cursed me, as you saw yesterday. I am not a feet person, but God cursed me with a leg foot malady because he was like, you need to get used to feet. But it is what it is. You have to find humor and stuff. Hello, Mads. Uh Uh, so that's kind of what I figured we would do for the first little bit, and then I would go into the defense opening statements, and I would really try to explain kind of what stuck out to me about what the state or what the hospital did, why I found it so evil. Again, coming from someone that has this condition, yeah, no feet are wrong. And then you guys could ask questions because again, it is fairly rare. But as always, the internet has help for us because the internet is our friend. Ask Jeeves being what it is. But, and I do have some videos, but we can go through the kind of boring stuff first. So, what is complex regional pain syndrome? It used to be called RSD. So, you might have heard people call it RSD before. So, if you have known someone that had reflex sympathetic dystrophy, that's what it used to be called. Now, back then, and I think that might have been a better name, honestly, because it better explains that there's something. We need the whiteboard of truth. It's already here. I have everything set up because I am a genius. Let's hope that these markers work better. I have the power. But now, here is your brain. Here's a little bit that's your lizard brain. Here's your spinal cord. Now imagine this is my foot. Obviously, it's not the greatest picture ever. And then something down here hurt it. Now the pain signal from down here is supposed to go up here to the brain, tells your dumbass to stop doing whatever the hell down here is hurting your foot. You move your foot because you're not a dumbass, and then that pain signal ends. So it stops this pain signal from down here, and you move your foot. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, in complex regional pain syndrome, this cycle, this sort of, down here loop just never gets turned off for some reason, and they're not quite sure why, which is awesome. We're medical miracles. But they're for the most part, what happens, and we can go to our handy dandy internet friends from the internet and doctors on the internet, but complex regional pain syndrome is also called reflex sympathetic dystrophy. So it's a reflex. Again, your body generally what pain is supposed to do is to stop you from being a dumbass. Like, you touch a hot stove and generally you put stove hot, and that particular pain signal doesn't even go all the way up to your brain. It goes to your spine because again, God knows we were really not too smart or whoever made us. And that particular pain signal only goes to your spine and then you move your hand quickly. Well, in complex regional pain syndrome, something about that loop gets confused. And I wish they would have kept it. Dystrophy just means that something is wrong. And then so the sympathetic just means that you have two different nervous systems, if you will. You have your autonomic nerve system. So right now that we're talking about it, you're going to notice that you're breathing. You're going to actually pay attention to it now. You're going to pay attention to your breathing and you're actually going to be conscious of it. But for the most part, you're not. That's part of your autonomic, nerve system. You don't generally pay attention to your breathing. You don't generally pay attention to your digestion, that kind of thing. So for the most part, that's not involved in complex regional pain syndrome. What is the sympathetic nerve are. Well, that's good. As long as you have your phone, then you're still alive. Now, what happens is that your sympathetic nerve syndrome or pain your sympathetic nervous system is everything else. So, the ability to feel touch, everything else, that is your sympathetic nerve system, which is, just everything else. It's a chronic pain condition in which high levels of nerve impulses are set to the affected site. Experts believe that CRPS happens because of a dysfunction in the central or peripheral nervous system. Now, this is all to say they have absolutely no idea what's going on. As a total nerd who got diagnosed, I watched all the symposia on YouTube that I could. And what I learned from watching all the symposia I could was they're just as confused as the rest of us, unfortunately. CRPS is most common in people from 20 to 35. It is rare in children, but I will find for you, not today because today is kind of a more relaxing stream, but I will show you there are videos on YouTube. When kids are affected, it affects them greatly. I mean, they go from being normal kids to directly almost in wheelchairs, kind of like Maya. And really, theirs is the type that there really isn't an antecedent sort of injury like I had. So That's what it is. So what causes complex regional pain syndrome? Now, I had the more common kind, which is, you had an antecedent accident. Mine happened to be an asshole deer startled me. Now, granted, I am not the world's most graceful creature, any hoozle. So it could be that it was not all the deer's fault, but I will go to my grave blaming this deer. It was a walking drive-by deer attack. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, damn it. But it was early in the morning. I was rucksacking, and if you don't know what rucksacking is, it is where you have a backpack and you have weight in it. She did have an accident, so that could be it. Or it could not be it. I mean, honestly, they have no idea what triggers it other than your something triggers in the nervous system or the brain, and something about the loop just gets screwy. CRPS most likely does not have a single cause, rather, it results from multiple causes that produce similar symptoms. Some theories suggest that pain receptors in the affected part of the body become responsive to catecholamides, a group of nervous system messengers. In the case of injury related CRPS, the syndrome might be caused by the triggering of an immune response, which may lead to inflammatory symptoms of redness, warmth, swelling in the affected area. For this reason, it is believed that CRPS may represent a disruption of the healing process. For most, it often appears after an injury but can be triggered by an infection, heart attack, stroke, cancer, neck problems, or even nerve issues. So again, this pretty much all goes to say that they're not quite sure what causes it. Now, I will say, and lucky for Maya, because I believe she went to RSD Foundation, or now I believe it's called the Complex Regional Foundation now, but the RSD Foundation has the headquarters in Tampa. They are one of the only places that does recommend the ketamine treatment, and they sponsored the only study, or the first study, that showed ketamine to be one of the only treatments that sort of, while it doesn't cure the, the disease, it does somewhat help to reset that signal problem that we talked about. Now, so what are the symptoms? Symptoms of CRPS can vary in their severity and length. Now, some people have said that CRPS can be put into remission. From what I've heard from many people who have suffered this and from support groups, that is not the truth, at least from what I've heard from people that have had this. I'm holding out hope that maybe it can be put in remission, but I'm not sure. One symptom of CRPS is continuous intense pain that gets worse rather than better over time. So I will tell you, and you know, hold on to your butts, guys, because we're gonna see some feet pictures. I warned you. I warned you. So this was my foot right after I got injured. I am sorry. Now, to explain to you that Mo is God's most stubborn creature, I decided this was not the day of, but the day after, because I decided it was just sprained. I'm telling you guys, I hate doctors. I did not want to go. Mr. Mo basically had to put me into the car and deliver me to urgent care, where they said, yes, your ankle is broken. Now, let me get the board of truth out. I have to wet it down because I'm using wet erase markers because I am a giant nerd and love them too much. Now, every CRPS person is going to have different sensations, and they'll say it's either fire by ice or fire. But directly after my injury, we're just gonna make a leg. Here's some toes because I suck at drawing. A little asshole bone, which is not a medical term, but that's what I call it because that's what I broke. So I broke this little asshole bone, which I think should be named this broke. Now, this has never healed, but they say it'll be fine because it's kind of sort of just stuck in its own place and it's not moving. It's an approximation of a foot. It is what it is. So, for me, for my left leg, what CRPS feels like to me is that, and here's a knee. Look, I'm fluffy. We've decided. We we've accurately. So, my foot can swell up to 2 times of its normal size. It turns purple up to about here in my leg, but from here down, if you've ever had frostbite, like where you can't feel your toes, um, generally, I feel like I have level 1 to level 2 frostbite. So, from here down, um, on a bad day, I can't get warm. I feel like it could be 80 degrees outside, and look, y'all, I am very sorry. This is awkward. I am wearing my big fuzzy green sock. It is the only sock that I can wear. I had Mr. Mo buy 8 packs of this sock. It is the only one that my foot will tolerate. Uh, I bought them out. It is, but I can't get that foot to feel warm. It feels hot to the touch. I've had Mr. Mo check it. Generally, I will sit with a heating pad on it, uh, and Mr. Mo has to make sure that it doesn't get too hot because I can actually burn it and not realize it, which has sometimes happened, and that's not good either. And then where did I put my as we are fluffy? From the we'll start from my thigh, so from the knee up, feels like lightning strikes and burning. So, basically, I what they tell you with CRPS, because what they don't want you to do, and what I've had to learn, is they want you to continue to move. So, I don't know if anyone's ever been to the hospital where you have the 0 to 10 ping scale. So, you have the little smiley guy and the really sad guy going on. My baseline is where I usually sit every day is between a 4 and a 5, and I can handle that. A 4 and a 5 is okay. I've learned to deal with 4 and a 5. And what I've learned over the last year is that if I get to about a 7, I have to stop. But I can live right here pretty okay. And a 4 and a 5 is pretty a good day. So it hurts all the time. But on flare-up days, it's worse. On flare-up days, it can get to a 10. Like I said, I have, um, on flare-up days, I have spoken to my local lawyer friend who asked if, I asked like, "So if I write down on a letter that, Mr. Mo is okay to knock me out, that's not considered assault, right?" Um, and, I was confidently told that that would still be, possibly bad for Mr. Mo. But I did want to touch on the contracture part. I do have a video, and I feel like a year ago, I would not have shown this, but, look, Maya has had her entire life shown on this. So, this is yesterday. So, that would be it's not one of my bigger spasms, but that's kind of the contracture that he was talking about, when he was talking about how her feet would turn in and not be able to stay there. And when he talked about them putting those boots on, I cannot tell you the pain of when you are having one of those really bad days where your foot is trying to do that and then they try to pull it back, how much that hurts. So, that's why I decided to add that video, and it in that video, I was trying to be really quiet, but that hurts so bad. So, I was kinda curling in on myself. I would have a year ago, I wouldn't have posted that or shared that with you guys, but, look, Maya has had her entire life basically put out on video, um, and shown. So it's an intense burning pain. It can feel either hot or cold, like a sunburn or a freezer burn thing. Um, Yesterday, Mr. Mo had to put the lidocaine patches on, and I went into full body spasm because they're cold, but I needed the pain relief. So um, I'll probably lose my in theory. Now, the only good thing is that in theory, my leg hairs should stop growing. So I should be able to stop sha shaving my legs. Yeah, my husband is a saint. I can only imagine. It's, um it's really been, difficult to deal with it. It's it's a lot to take on, so I can't imagine uh, my legs hairs are blonde anyway, so I don't know that they would turn blonder, nor am I gonna let small children at a local pool play with them, so I don't know. So, um, and this is the hard thing that, yeah, the foot contractions really, really hurt. Um, I would paddle corn pop if I had to. There really should be. I so on good days, what I do, I try to, work on desensitization. So there is a theory that if you, work every day to not baby your leg, or your affected arm, you can have an arm or a leg or your abdomen. If you work on getting your keeping your leg used to I'll just use leg, used to stimulation, used to different things. In theory, it keeps that nerve stimulated and, you get used to it, and it kind of it helps your body get used to it, and it doesn't react so badly. Thus far, I have not noticed any difference, but I keep doing it in hopes that it will help. I can't wear leggings anymore. Leggings are too tight. Um, that's why I cosplay as a Pentecostal. I buy, these really fun, uh, Pentecostal, activewear skirts. I am a little worried about winter. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm hoping I will get a brainwave coming soon. I might just wear really big sweatpants. Hopefully that will or maybe I'll just stay inside. You know, Amazon is a thing. Um, so how is it diagnosed? Now, you guys heard about, the Budapest, protocol, which is kind of the gold standard. What they did use for me, was one of the more high-tech, kind of diagnostic tools, and honestly, they were kind of because I tend to have a higher pain tolerance, and I like to push through. Um, so, my physiatrist was actually shocked it came back with advanced complex regional pain syndrome, and I'd gone so long just kind of pushing through. Uh, but they did a triple bone scan where they basically, inject you with a radioactive isotope of something or other, I don't remember what. They do a scan of your leg, when they do it, and then you go back, I think 4 hours later, and it showed, um, a lot of changes going from my ankle going all the way up my tibia of the, just the blood scan or the blood flow. Um, also, like the defense person, and I've only watched a little bit of the opening, there was the allodynia, the painful touch, but it's only when you're having sort of a flare up. So it really is a mind screw because there can be certain days where, Griffin or the puppy can come up and, jump on my leg and nothing will happen. I mean, it will hurt, but not so much more than usual, and I won't have any issues. But, the last 2 days, poor Fry has been a little depressed because generally he can hang out with me on the bed, he can sleep in the bed with me, which I know you're not supposed to do, but he does anyway because he's my pal. I am his Leela. He is my Fry, but not in that weird way. But, I couldn't have anyone near me, and even extra stimulus like sound can put me into a full body spasm because something about that parasympathetic nerve system is just overwhelmed, and even noise, and Mr. Mo knows not to turn on the light or anything because it can cause a spasm, which is it's bad enough as an adult, and I have learned because the part that resonated with me is I was the hospital for me. I was telling me it was all in my head. I was telling me, "Hey, this is all in your head. You are making this up. It's just a broken ankle. Get on with it. You've got stuff to do. You're a mom. You've got 6 kids." Ice it, elevate it, and oh my gosh, icing it was such a terrible idea. Um, you have stuff to do. You have kids to take care of. It so on a 10-day, uh, I liken it to having a migraine, um, or if you've just think about it being a cup overflowing. Your body is just at its complete fullness, and one even one more thing is just too much, is how I try to explain it, and God love them, the boys don't have an inside voice. And that's why it's so good that Fry is kind of the world's laziest dog. He's actually sleeping right now. So, it really when it is bad, it is that bad. So the fact that the nurses were coming in and touching her and messing with her, and she couldn't get any rest, and she couldn't do anything to relax herself, your eyes kind of go blurry. I mean, it is horrific to deal with as an adult, but to have an entire hospital basically telling you're crazy. You don't have your mom there who has been your support system, your dad there. You have these weird social workers telling you they're going to be your mom. You're getting, like, stripped down and, photographed naked. I mean, it just this has been life-changing as an adult. I can't imagine as a child having to deal with all of this and then having to stand there or sit there. Yeah, and being told it is humbling beyond belief to have to text Mr. Mo to use the restroom, okay? And that happened yesterday. Humbling beyond belief. But to put this child and again, I haven't gone through the whole defense thing, but to put this child in a room and observe her to see if she's faking that she can't go into the restroom, whatever. You know what? Boob punches allegedly for everyone in Tetris and Atari. Now, there are some treatments, and I am looking at a couple of different things. Um, what you can do I am on certain I so YouTube gets a little leery when you talk about drugs. I will say that I am on, Lyrica, which is sort of what they would use for epilepsy and nerve pain. I'm on the highest dose that they can give me. They can't give me any more, and that helps somewhat. What I will say is, um, the side effects can we make a medicine that doesn't have side effects? For the love of Cheetos, can we make something or good side effects like, "Hey, by the way, this medicine might give you the boobs of an 18-year-old," or, "Hey, we don't wanna alarm you, but this could give you a six-pack." I mean, I'm just saying pharmaceutical companies, something that doesn't give you, like, extreme dizziness or, tiredness or tired-oscopy, or complete disassociation. Could we do something like that? Could that happen? So, I have tried, or, make your eyes blurry for a long time. Sympathetic nerve blocks, these are kind of your doctor will give you an MRI. It showed that there were injuries to or nerve blocks possibly in the L4, L5 range of my back. The doctor my doctor might or might not be semi-autistic. Let me go to story time because it's a Mo stream, there's gonna be story time. So, we are here getting, Mr. Mo has to take the day off because I'm getting my, first nerve block injections on my spine, and my doctor has the unerring ability to be late. Late, 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 and I am double, triple type A. Like, if I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be here 15 minutes early, and if you are not 15 minutes early, you are late. My doctor has the ability to, uh to just not be anywhere near early. So, I have not eaten all day because you're not supposed to eat before anything, because you know. And, he comes strolling in 30 minutes late after I am about ready to effing leave because I am done. Because, let's just say when Mo's a little nervous, Mo gets a little controlly, and I am like, "Look, I am done. This man is late." I'm even asking the nurses, like, "Does he just ever show up?" And this man might not be able I did. This was the f It was his first appointment. Like, dude was late to surgical appointments. I was like, "Does this man ever show up on time?" And the nurse was like, "Well, he tries." And I was like I told Mr. Mo, I was like, "I'm gonna go home and do it at home. You know what? Whatever. I'm done. I'm done. This man is a moron." So this man comes in with a full-on N95 duck mask, and being that he is I have already labeled him full on autistic, okay? No offense to anyone who suffers from autism, he just cannot read the room, okay? Because I have full on I feel like might have a gold standard resting bee face. I feel like it radiates off me, and you can understand the bee waves that are coming off me just like Mr. Mo, can see them just flowing off of me. And I wore my Daria shirt that says, "I don't have low self-esteem, I have low esteem of others." Like, I tend to wear my thoughts and feelings on my T-shirts. Like, so he's reading my T-shirts and he wants to give me a high five. I wanted to give him a middle finger, double deuces, if you will. And Mr. Mo is like, "Oh my god, he really can't read you, can he?" He's like, "We're ready to go, aren't we, champ?" And I was like, Who the hell are you are functionally I will just." I was like, "Are we what? Let's go." I was not in I was just like I was like, "Mr. Mo, hold me back. I'm not gonna look good in." You know how you have a friend, like, hold you back, like in the movies, like, "Hold me back." Like, "I'm gonna catch a case in Bloomington." Okay, so we get into the room, and unfortunately, you sort of have to drop trow, with these weird people, and I'm starting to focus on the music in the room because I have control of nothing, but they're playing Counting Crows, and I'm like, "Okay, I can play look, I love Counting Crows. We can deal with this." Now, as a terrible patient, I tend to freeze up when I'm in pain. I don't tend to shout out. This doctor find touches both nerves with this needle. And he's like, "Well, you have to tell me when I'm in pain." And I was like, "I tend to freeze up. So if you see me freeze up, you might could have touched a nerve." So he touched it twice. He's like, he touched the butt. He touched the, yeah. So now, in theory, if these were going to work, I would have felt relief immediately because there is numbing agent and steroid in these injections. Now, what happened is that my right arm, affecting nothing, went numb and my legs hurt. So I'm back in the recovery room and he's like, "How are you feeling?" I was like, "Well, I do have a question. Why is my right arm numb?" And he's like, "Well, that's odd." I'm like, "Well, you're the doctor. I would hope you would know." He's like, "Well, that's never happened. That's really weird." Well, I'm glad you know this is awesome. I was like, "Oh, for heaven's sake." So we figured out that didn't work. Now this has kind of gotten out of favor, but they used to burn the nerves, at the spine. I will be trying a spinal cord stimulator next. Now, this is an if you've ever had a TENS unit, let me see if I can pull one up here. Doo, doo, doo. TENS units are a fairly wonderful thing that you can use at home. They're an external device that uses electronic waves. Yes. Yes, those kind of have fallen out of favor, but a TENS unit is an external device that you can use on muscles that uses electronic waves that kind of either stimulate the nerve or kind of calm it down that you can use externally for pain. Now, what the internal spinal stimulator is supposed to do is do it very gently on those nerves to see if it will block the signals directly at the source to give me pain relief. The good thing about that is that there is a trial, uh, a 10-day trial where they will put in the electrodes. I hadn't thought of that. Maybe I'll just go pretend I'm a sovereign citizen somewhere. I'll just go and be like, "I am a traveler upon this land," and do that. Um, yeah, so basically, if the trial doesn't work, I will be looking at another doctor because the only thing that the RSD Foundation has found to work is, the ketamine, infusions. And most doctors, because of sort of the connotations of ketamine being a sort of party drug and things like that, insurance has been slow to take it up. It's somewhat controversial. If if I had screw you money and I would go to Mexico and I would probably do the coma that Maya did in the documentary because it did give her the most amount of relief for the longest time. Now, that being said, um, you can live with this. You do have good days. I've learned a lot of tricks to deal with flare-ups, the noise canceling headphones, uh, weighted, uh, weighted heating pads, let's see, weighted heating pads, different pillows that work, having Fry, staying active, having this community, you know, being kinder to my body, actually listening to my guess is because in America, look, it's fairly risky, I'm not gonna lie to you, and my guess is it's effective. If I'm gonna be really fair, it's effective, and a lot of doctors want you to be on pain pills. I don't wanna be on pain pills. I have never refilled my pain pills. I don't like them. I don't like the way they make you feel. I don't know if I've told you guys the story of the one and only time I took my pain medication. I cannot remember, but if you guys have not heard that story, we will have another story time before we get into the opening statements, because we've spent about an hour doing this, and I did wanna at least do the defense opening statement, you know, just for poo and giggles. And I don't always like to talk about me and my story times. Yeah, it there's a lot of things I'm learning, and I am learning that there is definitely a mental part to this, so I will be looking for a therapist that specializes in chronic pain close to me. There's not a lot of therapists. There are biofeedback people that they're just plain weird. The one guy I talked to oh, here's another story time. So, the one and only biofeedback guy I talked to the first time, so I get him on the phone and he's like, "Yeah, I do biofeedback, but, it's not covered by." Yes, press 1 if you have heard, uh, the one and only time I took the pain medicine. If you have not heard it, press uh, 2 or wait, press 1 if you have not heard it, press 2 if you have heard it so that I can know if I've said this already. I'm still kind of in that foggy bit where I'm coming out of the flare up, so you'll have to excuse my somewhat, flightiness, y'all. It's been a very good Sal, very good. Alright, so the one and only time I took my pain medicine, I was having a terrible day. I was at a 10, and I think Mr. Mo had taken the day off, and or he was off for some reason, and it was a day that, the youngest, most feral was home for some reason. I cannot remember why he was home, but the general gist is he was home. He was, not happy with me at okay, and then I'll tell you about the neural feedback guy, but so the youngest, most feral was not happy with me because I told him since these, pain pills have, uh, the tendency to just knock me the heck out, that he would not be allowed, um, to go outside because I tend to just fall asleep and or just be, kind of in a twilighty state, which considering I'm blonde, I mean, terrible things could happen. So he was not happy. Now, given the fact that he was not happy, you have seen, let's see, the orange cat here is Loki. He decided to give Loki a haircut for reasons that were only him and himself's going on. Now, what he also decided is that the hair that he cut off would look really cool if he gave me a beard. So, in his own defense, it probably looked hilarious. But I had a ginger cat hair beard all the way up, yeah, when I woke up. So I start yelling for Mr. Mo because I am like, the hell did I do when I was on these pain medications? Because all I have is this just pile of cat fur. Now, lucky enough, Mr. Yes, okay, now I knew I had said something about this, but lucky enough, Mr. Loki has plenty of fur, and apparently he just gotten it from the bottom of his belly, but I was like, "Did I shave a cat while today?" And he's like, "No, you haven't moved from the bed. I made sure you were breathing." Like that, Richard Pryor movie where they had to put the, mirror under the dog's nose to make sure he was still alive. But I so after that, I decided no more of that. Now I do take, certain herbal remedies, if you will, that are legal in my state, but Indiana sucks, so it is what it is. Um, and I find that those work better and keep me alert and I can function, and I wish that, uh, traditional conservatives would, unclench their behind holes just a little bit and realize that those of us who deal with chronic pain aren't trying to be, hippies. We are just trying to function. That's all I'm gonna say about that on the thing. Well, give him a year. Give him a year. Anywho, and back to the biofeedback guy. So I get on the phone with this biofeedback guy and I'm like, "Okay, so what am I looking at?" And he gave me this link to this $4,000 machine. Then he proceeds to tell me how he self-dilate look, what about this face and this voice decides to let people want to tell me about their bits and pieces? I have never met this man, I haven't even talked to him again on the phone, but decides to tell me about how he self-dilated his own ureter to pass the world's biggest kidney stone, and that he's like, I focused and I dilated myself," and I'm like, "I just wanna get off the phone. I'm being held hostage. I don't wanna know about your uterus. I'm scared. I want to stop this. Make it stop. Make it stop. I don't wanna know about your ureter. I've never wanna hear about this ever again. I most certainly don't wanna know about biofeedback ever again." So, I have been traumatized about biofeedback, but I am looking to learn more about it again. I just never I was traumatized. This man started talking about his ureter and dilating and mentally pushing out it, and I was like, uh," and this is not the first time this has happened," and I looked at Mr. Mo and I said, "What about my face? What about my voice demands that people tell me about their peens? Why? Just why? I don't understand. Do I need to just start my own, like, night talk radio show? Like, I don't stop. I need an adult." So I did not have the easiest, intro, but if you have any questions as we're going through the opening, I can try to explain them. I will stop. I No, this was just a random guy that I found when I was looking up biofeedback because I had tried before to, look at maybe the more mental, emotional side of this whole thing, but then I got traumatized and I was like, "You know what? No, no, I'm done. We'll just ignore the whole mental, physical, emotional side of this. This is nope, gonna lock that in a box." But let's get to at least the defense opening statements so we can pretend that we're doing something. What in the world am I doing? All right, let's move this up. And I will probably stop and explain certain things because this is there are things here that I think will make more sense if I put a little bit of context into that. And I won't be doing the state or what the I'll probably have Sal with me because Sal will have to hold me back when we do the hospital stuff because I still need to make my pedi patch. My whole flare up just, you know, completely did that. And I'm just gonna do this stream, and then tomorrow we'll have newsy news and all the fun stuff, but let's get into this. Let me know if you can hear
Good
everything. Have it on.
morning, almost afternoon. Uh, My name is Howard Hunter, and I have the privilege of representing Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital and the people who staff it and who make it. We're here today
Wait a minute,
to
no.
defend this case.
This is not I don't want the defense. Screw you. I want this guy.
So
Sorry.
You're all good to
We
go
never want the
for the next
defense.
90 minutes?
Here we go,
Missed
sorry.
a
We never want the
diagnosis of
defense.
complex regional pain syndrome on 7 different occasions when Maya was in for their care. We will prove that they misdiagnosed Maya's symptoms from October 7th through the end of the year, wrongfully accusing Beata and Jack Kowalski of child abuse, and alleging and attempting to show that Maya had a mental disorder. She was crazy. She was making it up. We'll prove that they realized their error pretty quickly. And instead of apologizing, saying we're sorry.
Okay. Now, this is where, David said that in openings, you're really not supposed to, especially in civil cases, I believe you're really not supposed to talk about apologies or sorries. I'm sure that he will lawyerify this. Well, now I have to I like Star Wars. I'm gonna have to send Mr. Mo to Walmart for reasons. Sorry.
You may continue, Mr. Anderson.
Upon realizing their error, for the next 3.5 months, they took every step in the world to attempt to force the Kowalskis to agree with the wrongful diagnosis. Maya Kowalski was falsely imprisoned and battered. She was denied communication with her family. She was denied communication with the outside. She was told that her mother was crazy. She was told by social workers that one in particular, she would be her mother. She was
So, what I can tell you from personal experience and kind of let me see if I can make a picture that will explain it a little easier. So, let me embiggenate myself with the mobile board of truth. On You can stay kind of on your level 4 to 5, and I don't know where she is on her level. Her level might be a 7. Some people are unlucky and stay at a 7 or 8 all the time. This is called the suicide disease. Um, some people are at a 7 and 8 all the time. I don't know where she is, but what I can tell you with it being a parasympathetic nerve issue, um, all of this emotional upheaval, definitely the emotions can cause a flare up. Um, Last year when we had the CRPS or when we had the CPS person come to the house because the boys were shoving their, um, lunches into or their sandwiches into the, cubby holes. Oh, yes, sorry, banner. Oh, I meant defend. Right. I keep forgetting this is a civil. Thank you. Thank you, chat. You are always on top of it if I am not. Uh, when the gentleman was here, or when the gentleman was there, I was literally on I have a long heating mat. I don't believe in the crystal thing, but it's infrared. It goes up to Fahrenheit, and I think I had it up to 110 degrees or something. I was in full body spasm as he's trying to ask me questions. I could not stop spasming. I'm over here in tears, basically out of 10, trying to talk to him. And I was trying to function, but I couldn't. Emotional upheaval will trigger issues, is basically what I'm trying to say. So I can only imagine what she is going to be dealing with this now as as the case is going through.
put into a room and left for 42 hours with the commode just out of reach. because the hospital wanted to prove that she could actually get up and walk. So they wanted her on video, this is a surveillance room, to get out of bed and then go over to the commode when nobody was watching. Instead, she defecated on herself. For 42 hours, she was kept in that room, denied access to anyone or anything, under the false assertion that it was an EEG exam. Maya was repeatedly battered by nurses and social workers who were trying to prove that she did not have CRPS. Things were done such as coming in and patting her on her leg. They were hugging her against her will, took her down to the chapel, sat.
Okay, and, eh, what I want you to understand is when these are normal things you think about hugging and touching. For a normal patient, that would be fine. When she is having a flare-up, if she is having a flare-up, that can put her in full body spasms. Just putting the lidocaine patch on yesterday put me in full body spasms. If they were hugging her, it could have felt to her like they were like it was a boa constrictor. If they patted her, it felt like someone was taking a sledgehammer to her. On a bad day, if I had to do desensitization therapy and they had to rub a towel over my leg, it feels like sandpaper over an open wound. I'm telling you guys, this is evil. This is evil. There are so what there is the Budapest, and he'll go into it. There's the Budapest protocol, and then there was the triple, bone scan, which is what I did. So and it tests blood scan or blood flow and things like that. But he'll go into the symptoms, and she basically it doesn't feel like pins and needles for me. It feels like freezer burn, on my lower part of my leg, and then from the knee up to the thigh, it feels like almost a sunburn, and then lightning strikes if I move wrong. It's I actually have so what I decided to do to make it easier for my doctors is I made this. So, and I would recommend it if you have something that's difficult for you to explain, there are they have an anatomical coloring book for people that are learning, uh, for medical people that are learning, how to, find the different, you know, where things go. So what I did is, doctors I tend to ramble, if you noticed, and doctors don't have 2 hours to do a long form, stream. So what I started doing was making a color chart, and I've these this has kind of transformed as I've gone through. So what I have is I have one of these laminated, and then I have my wet erase markers, and I can change it, as I go to different doctors now to kind of give them an update of what's going on so that it's easy, it's a visual kind of cue to them, and I don't have to like, say there's the RSD Foundation has a sort of emergency room protocol that I need to laminate. They come out with a new one every year, but basically for ERs, for situations like this, doctors and ERs are not equipped and don't really know about these kind of things. So it gives suggestions for medical people who are not aware of CRPS, like use a child pediatric butterfly, oh gosh, what is it called? IV port on the non-affected limb or non-affected side, um, to administer any drugs. Don't do anything on the affected side. Don't do any pressure cuffs on the affected side, things like that. So, generally, it wasn't so I did an MRI, but it's not a CT scan, it might be they call it a damn it, what is it called? I am having a brain fart. They called it a triple bone scan, a it's I'm having a brain fart. It's not a CT scan, but they put, radiological dye in me and then, saw how the blood flow was to the affected limb, and then something about how the blood flow was to the affected limb, the lessening and or of it, um, was consistent with the diagnosis. That's all I can explain as a non-doctoral person. But what I can tell you is what they were doing to try to prove she didn't have it was pain beyond what you can imagine, and they would have seen it. Had they had they touched her on flare-up days, she would have been screaming, or if it was me, I wouldn't scream, but I could go into full body spasms. So or it depends if they had really if someone had s if you touch my leg right now because it's so sensitized because I am coming out of a flare up, like, if someone just came by and touched it or did something like that, I would probably go into a full body spasm right now, and then that's just what it is. So, they would have seen evidence that she is not faking it, and if you are a nurse and you see signs that someone is having a physiological reaction of pain, why you would continue to do this is beyond me. I don't care if you think it's psychological. You left a child in a room for 48 hours to poop herself. You're evil, and you should have your medical license taken away, and you should allegedly, in Minecraft, get a boob punch, okay?
Her on the lap of one named Kathy Beatty, who told her that she would be her mother. Her mother was, you know, crazy, and that she needed a mother, and that social worker would be there. Maya was kept from her family and friends. She was denied access to her priest. She had what they called religious artifacts, such as holy water, her prayer book, her rosaries taken from her on the belief that her mother was controlling her over religion. She was denied access to counsel, at least insofar as having the ability to actually meet with her attorney without people listening in at the door. All of her phone calls were monitored. Her iPad computer was taken away because she was told she might be, this is a 10-year-old, cruising internet sex sites. Maya was denied the comforts of her friends and her family throughout her stay there. On another occasion, again, to try to show that Maya did not have rather significant symptoms of CRPS, which you'll see are these small little red, angry lesions that appear on different parts of the body, underneath the arm, along the arms, sometimes on the legs, sometimes on the back. And you'll see photos here in a moment. But in order to prove that she didn't have one, she was systematically stripped and photographed against her will and without any authorization from anyone, least of all her parents. They continue to accuse the Kowalskis, Jack and Beata, of being child abusers, even after the evidence, we believe you'll conclude, was overwhelming that she had CRPS. In fact, we will see whether at some point they even admit she had CRPS in this case. Yet they still, throughout this period of time, continue to accuse Beata of child abuse and Jack of child abuse, something called Munchausen by proxy, which means that you're intentionally trying to keep your child ill. It's usually a circumstance with a very small child where a mother will be like putting something in an IV or things like that. And Maya at this time was,
Now, I do wanna step in here because and he'll go into it in the defense, opening a bit, but there is usually I am very lucky, at least in my diagnosis, that it took under a year to get my diagnosis. I think, my physiatrist said I had one of the quickest diagnoses he's ever seen from my break to, actually being diagnosed with CRPS. Generally, and you will see, it took, almost 2 years for them to figure out what she had. So the mother the overprotectiveness and the, aggressive advocacy that the mother displayed, that the hospital took for Munchausen, is just the fact that the mother has been through this bullshit of no one knowing what the hell to do for her daughter for years, and now that they know what to do, this hospital not that doesn't know what to do, she knows what is going on with her daughter and the hospital isn't listening, but the hospital being ridiculous, uh, labels that as the mother being aggressive and Munchausen by proxy and trying to get her daughter too much drugs.
10 years old. There is no evidence whatsoever of Munchausen by proxy. By January 13th, when Maya was finally left out of the hospital, unsurprisingly, this family was a wreck. Maya was not let out of the hospital even after her mother committed suicide on January 7th of 2017. Now, the story with Beata Kowalski is a complex one, and I'll tell you about it in a moment. But we will prove that the continued allegations that she was crazy and that she was trying to harm her own children, both Kyle and Maya, and the knowledge of the systematic abuse of her child in the hospital caused her at the end to lose completely and utterly her ability to control the maternal instinct, and that outweighed the survival instinct.
I the only thing that I think the defense should have done at this point is I wish Maya and I know why they have Maya out in front strategically, I understand why Maya being upfront and crying and why strategically she should be upfront, but I wish they would have let her sit with her dad and he could comfort her right now because God bless it. She's already been through enough. Can't we just award her the money already? And look, y'all, I know I'm not biased here. Or unbiased here. Look, if I were on the jury, I'd already been like, take the money and close down the damned hospital. Actually, line up all of the nurses. But again, I've already done told y'all I'm making a petty patch tomorrow because it got a little bit I know her hair is on point. I'm jealous. I want it. I mean, I wanted red hair because I'm naturally her color and but I
In the
just want
process,
justice for this family
they
because I
caused
know what she's
Beata Kowalski
gone
her
through.
life,
I'm not
denied Jack a loving wife, denied both Kyle and Maya a loving, caring, and amazing mother. They caused just terrific and permanent psychological injury, as one may expect, a permanent aggravation, and we'll explain the medicine behind that, of the CRPS. Now, the CRPS didn't start with Johns Hopkins. It started about 3 or 4 days before Johns Hopkins. But the evidence will show that something that could have been a controllable, manageable disease was aggravated to the point where throughout periods in her life, she will be incapacitated. And through all of it, she and her brother and her father will have post-traumatic issues and problems that will, frankly, we'll get that into that in a moment. We've asked in this case for you to consider not only compensatory damages to try to make them whole for these terrible things that have happened to them, but also punitive damages to deter them, to punish them, and to deter this type of behavior in the future.
Sorry, I had to
So
get a
some of the
drink.
evidence here will be directed towards that. So
Okay. Brother, we could have gotten you a haircut, sir. I'm just saying. We knew you were going to be in court. I don't know what this Justin Bieber thing is going on, but you could have gotten a haircut, sir. It's the only thing I'm going to say on that thing.
that's the overview of what
Maya's
we're
hair is
trying to
on
do.
point.
Now, how we
Brother,
plan to
I
do
don't
it.
know what you're
First,
doing.
you understand that we have really four plaintiffs here. We have Maya Kowalski right here. We have Kyle Kowalski, and we have Jack Kowalski. And Jack's also the parent and guardian of both of them, right? So the claims go through him, and then he has independent actions himself. And he's also
Yes.
appearing for the estate of his deceased wife, Biak.
Yes. Yes, they
And
did.
each of them have causes of action, some of them combined. Now, this historic case has been going on. It was filed in October 2018. I tell you this because the facts, key facts in the case, began several years before. But through the course of
Oh,
time, we've taken an immense number of depositions. We have found audio tapes, videotapes, surveillance tapes, a lot of evidence for you to review towards proving these allegations. The core claims, again, are medical malpractice, which is that the defendants failed to meet the standard of care, and we will prove that through expert witnesses, that they failed to identify CRPS, which is also known, by the way, as RSD, the older name, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, now known as CRPS. Okay. They failed to identify it at first, and then they misdiagnosed it. And then once misdiagnosing it and realizing they misdiagnosed it, the evidence will prove they went about a system to try to get the Kowalskis to admit they were right. Battery, I talked about. False imprisonment of Maya on multiple occasions. Intentional infliction of emotional distress is where you do things so outrageous that they cause damage and injury to a person. In this case, it's suicide. In this case, traumatic disorders, depression, a multitude of emotional problems and issues. We've alleged fraud in that they intentionally deceived or attempted to deceive in the proof of the matter. We also alleged fraud in that they billed $536,000 for the treatment of CRPS.
and that's where you effing lose me. For the love of God. You have been telling this young child for months that she doesn't have this stuff. You've given her all these, tests to prove that you don't have it, but you billed under the code CRPS. End of case, end of story, done. I'm sorry. That should have been the end of it. The judge should have awarded them everything they did. We shouldn't even have a case. They billed for CRPS. I am effing done. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Fuck. I'm sorry. That was my one curse word. I mean, I'll probably have more. But yes, they billed under the code, the medical billing code for CRPS.
And yet never treated her for CRPS and took multiple positions, especially to them, especially to Maya, that she did not have CRPS. Yet they billed over $500,000 to the healthcare provider and the Kowalskis for the treatment of it. Beata Kowalski was born in 1973 in communist Poland. You may recall that the Berlin Wall came down in 1988, and in 1990, within a couple of years, she was able to escape Poland at the age of 17 and come to the United States. She also had a couple of relatives here already, so she made it over. stayed with
Uh,
relatives in
I have not
Chicago,
gotten that far
and
yet in
got
this
her
case. Like I said,
AA
I
in
have all the
nursing,
cursey
and
words
then
ready.
her BS in nursing, and then added to it 2 or 3 other specializations. And then eventually, and we'll go to this in a moment, ended up an infusion nurse. Jack Kowalski was born in 1961. At the time all this went down, so Maya, let's see, Beata would have been 44 and would have been 50 today. Jack is 62 at this point. Jack was born and raised in Chicago. He's a firefighter and paramedic for over 28 years.
Yeah, let that sink in. She escaped communist country to be put through this bullshit by in America's freedom dong, might I add, with a bullshit government overreach and medical tyranny. Fire everyone in a cannon into the sun, allegedly. Make them play or into the swamp and make them play with the swamp puppies, which is what I call the gators. I like every single one of them. I mean, again, your first thing, the Hippocratic Oath, you giant hypocrites, is do no harm. What was the first thing you did? And you guys have to watch the documentary. I believe it's still on Netflix, or if you look, I recommend none of you go on the high seas if you are able and or technically aware, which I am not, uh, to see this, but the doctor, the DCF doctor or whatever, who was in charge of a lot of this, would would not listen to the specialists who were are begging them to listen, to say, "Maya had this." They have documentation, they have videos. They're showing her range of motion, how it changed, how it differed, how, things had changed when, uh, she had treatments for CRPS. It was documented. They would not listen. They continued on this. It's like with the Zachariah Anderson, it's like with the Richard Allen. They found their suspect, they found their reason, and they just doggedly went forward. The mom was an infusion nurse. I mean, she knew stuff. She knew stuff. She she had been dealing with, and as we go further into the opening statement, you're going to see that the journey to get Maya the complex regional pain syndrome diagnosis was long and arduous. So this mother knew the time it took to get her daughter the proper diagnosis. So when she sees her child in pain, yes, she is going to fight those nurses to get the correct treatment. And the correct treatment, the nurses got all irritated and a little bit in their feels because the mom who is a nurse was telling them, "No, that is not the correct treatment for what my child has. I'm sorry you don't know what this is. It's fairly, rare. Please listen to what I'm having to say. I know what I'm doing." And instead they're like, "Oh, well, this woman's obviously making it up and she's, abusing their kid." Watch it, because the text messages that between these nurses to console each other and make sure that they still feel okay when the mother kills herself, it a boob punch is too good for allegedly these women. They're like, "Oh, well, these moms, sometimes you can't help what these moms do sometimes, but we saved the little girl." Just
Rose to deputy chief, one of the Chicago fire departments.
makes you wanna,
He
take your wig off, take your earrings off,
donated
and,
time during the
pull
post
a little
9/11
bit of a
recovery to health.
IPS
He also
schoolgirl
did
out, if you know what I
work
mean.
during Hurricane Katrina during the recovery effort. And we'll have some video, I think, about several saves Jack made. One in rather dramatic of a wall collapsing right after he got some people out of the building. For 9/11,
Yeah,
he
no boob
designed the
punching
license plate for
advice.
9/11 firefighters, the loss. That's, I think, still in use. And he insists on distilling what he further insists on calling wine, which you will not have to try through the course of this case.
He's making his own hooch.
That was a joke. Well, I'm sorry, it's just not. So Jack and Beata met in Chicago, and they were married on a.
Oh, the hospital may not be the culprit, but they were complicit. They allowed their facility to be used, and if they employed people that were using their facility in this way and didn't keep track of their employees, doesn't that make them at least I mean, they're employing the people that went rogue, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a lawyerly person, who knows?
Cruise in Jamaica in 2004 with friends. Beata became stepmother to Jack's daughter Corrine by a prior marriage. Um, they were married, like I say, in 2004. They got along tremendously. There was a lot of mutual interest. One of them scuba diving. Uh, Jack was, as we say, a firefighter. Beata was a well-trained nurse working for Loyola University Medical Center in the cardiac
Oh, okay.
catheter lab.
I was making
Maya
sure
was
I
born in
legally
2005.
understood things.
Uh, Beata began working for CVS Coram as an in-home infusion nurse, which gave her a little more flexibility in terms of raising a family. And then Kyle was born in 2007. Interesting story there. Kyle was born with thrombocytopenia, which is low blood platelets. And because they needed blood, Beata's blood specifically, but because she had just had a child, she could not give the blood. Beata got up, checked herself out, went to a hospital down the street, gave the blood, collected the blood, came back to the hospital, checked herself back in, and gave the low platelet combating blood to her baby son.
Okay, that's the kind of mom we're dealing with, guys. The kind of mom that just gave birth is gonna check herself out because her son needed her blood type, checked herself into another hospital, drew her own blood, checked herself out of that hospital, and then gave her son her blood. That's what we ca that is the mom that they accused of hurting her child, okay? That's the mom. That's the mom that they lost, okay? N That's what makes this all the more ridiculous.
The couple moved to Florida in 2014. They already had some family down here. One of Jack's brothers lived here, lives lived near them,
Look,
and
I
Jack
don't
was
do
able to
blood,
retire
Sal, I
after I
have
think
no
25
idea.
years in the fire department.
Um, so, uh, J Jungle Mink Shelley, I didn't even realize your name changed. This case was brought primarily because of the fact that the, hospital essentially kidnapped, held Maya against their will, and then, blocked the family from any contact with her, accused the mother of Munchausen by proxy, and was accusing the entire family of abuse. The mother unalived herself. Now, the saddest part is at one of the hearings where very last hearing where, Beata right before she unalived herself, Beata simply asked to hug her daughter. She hadn't, I believe, seen her in she wasn't allowed to see her in 3 months. Their phone calls were monitored, everything was monitored. She couldn't even talk to her. In fact, the only way the husband could see the daughter is if he promised to, kind of denounce what the mother was doing and say, "Look, I will back off from whatever my wife is saying, I just wanna see my daughter." So he kind of did that, and so the wife felt very alone, and she just asked, "Can I just hug my daughter?" And the judge very kind of callously said, "Not this hearing." I believe that was probably the last straw, and then she took her own life. So after all of this, they finally got the go ahead and sue the hospital for medical malpractice and a lot of the things that he is getting into because there was a lot of shenanigans going on. They were trying to convince Maya that she didn't have complex regional pain syndrome. They, earlier in the opening statement for the plaintiff, they left Maya, who was unable to walk due to complex regional pain syndrome, in a room, without access. Basically, she would have had to walk to use the restroom. They left her in there for 24 hours. She soiled herself because she was unable to walk, but they wanted to catch her walking. When she was having pain or a flare up, they would come and touch her and things like that to try to prove that she was making this pain up in her head. She was being told that her mother was, abusing her, that all of her pain was made up. So it, eh, there were so many things that were done wrong to this family. Where the documentary ends, I don't know. I will have to get with a lawyer because where the documentary ends, it was kind of in limbo as to whether or not they would get their day in court. So I am glad that they are getting their day in court because I wasn't quite, as only a, YouTubey, lay tubey lawyer, I'm not quite sure what the legalese was about it, but there was concern that this was not going to make it to trial, but now it is, so let's continue because he really does lay out quite well why this mother comes in fairly aggressive, and, you know
Department. And Beato was able to transfer positions down to CVS Coram, and uh, she developed and had wonderful patients throughout the area here. Jack started applying to become a FEMA representative using his experience as a firefighter. That plan, as we'll see, was interrupted by what happened here. Maya, growing up a typical healthy kid, she had some asthma and allergies, as a lot of children do, uh, but nothing that wasn't controlled with the usual. She enjoyed ballet, gymnastics, figure skating with her mom. It's a very big thing in Poland, figure skating. And so Beata spent a lot of time with Maya towards that. And then Maya and Kyle enjoyed fishing in the backyard. Now, Kyle has majored in being skinny for most of his life, although we're finally seeing him put on a little bit of weight, loves fishing. And the new house in Florida they had over in
Hey, Mimsy.
Stonewalk, is that right? Has a pond out back, which is very handy. Now, on July 3rd, 2015, and this is a photo of the July 4th party, Maya started to feel a little bad. She apparently twisted her ankle in the gymnastics accident, or just from doing gymnastics, I guess. And then on the 4th, during all the festivities, Maya simply collapsed on the floor of the kitchen. And I think you'll hear Uncle Bob, her uncle, say she made a noise that no human child should make. And almost immediately had extraordinary pain, which developed over the course of the next 3 or 4 days to the point where it was extremely difficult for her to even walk. This was completely mysterious to everyone. She also had extremely rough coughing fits, which we'll have some, I know we'll have audio of, may have some video of too, so you can see where these came from. These are from deep within. She was taken to the ER, and then the initial diagnosis was allergic reaction, reactive airway disease. There were multiple theories. but Maya was not getting better. And on July 6th, it was her first inpatient admission to Johns Hopkins. Now, at this point, Maya could barely walk. And she was brought in, testing done. Of course, the parents and her brother are going nuts because they cannot figure out what's going on with her. And she is complaining of
Okay,
being in extreme
we're gonna
pain.
start making fun. Um, douche, they all look, if people could look like Skeksis from The Dark Crystal, they all look like that.
And so Beata, the nurse, gave a full history of everything she knew to that point, which really wasn't much because it had only been a few days. Johns Hopkins really didn't have
Those are the lawyers for the hospital. Notice, okay, we're gonna do a little bit of body, stuff. Look how they're all self-soothing because they know they're insufferable douches, and they're having to deal with the fact that they're comforting themselves because they're basically representing human evil. It's terrible. So they're all self-comforting and they're covering their mouths because they're realizing that it's a terrible, terrible thing to try to make a hospital who's abjectly evil look good. This has been Body Language Analysis by Mo.
have much of a diagnosis at that point, although they thought maybe some of the steroids that Maya took from her asthma might have been, causing some reaction. So her first consult with Suzanne Jackman from Johns Hopkins uh, notes
This is why I'm waiting for Sal to or either with Sal or some sort of guest, to watch the attorneys with the hospital because I'm afraid I would just use all the cursey words. I Oh, if Steve Gosney does a nope, then yeah, I'm not gonna.
low cortisol level, muscle pain, and muscle weakness. It says the pain and weakness may be steroid induced myopathy. And by this point, Maya, by July 12th, was discharged in a wheelchair. So she came into Johns Hopkins the first time, walking with difficulty, left in a wheelchair. And the diagnoses at that point were secondary to steroid use, generalized muscle weakness, habit, cough. Steroid
No,
myopathy
Murph.
is
Damn it.
interesting in this case because I think one of the issues may be about the
Dang it.
amount of ketamine it all eventually took to control Maya's pain. And something I think you're going to find is that steroids that she takes for her asthma actually have a component that breaks down ketamine pretty readily. We'll get into that a little further and have some experts talking about it.
Okay,
And
and
Maya,
we're
like
back
every
to, this one is looking at his LinkedIn profile, realizing that working for human evil is not what he'd like. Um, this guy realized that he's not in the right case. He was looking for the Orville Redenbacher, look-alike contest. This one is realizing that her cats all hate her, and, this guy just continues to look like he just looks like he continues to enjoy representing human evil, so I don't know.
victim of CRPS had good days and bad days, but her legs continued to wither. The second admission was July 17th through the 20th, an inpatient admission again to Johns Hopkins. There's a history and a physical, presents due to even more increased pain, now moving from her legs to her arms, her back, her stomach, her neck, and head. The differential diagnosis, myopathy, myositis, and now we start in with psychological pain conversion because they cannot figure out why this child has this degree of pain. In other words, no clue at this point. So as part of the treatment, they suggest that Maya be taken somewhere else, TGH, Tampa General Hospital.
Dang it. Yeah, I think so, but I think once they get to the video of her having that, and I do think if they bring the expert on to explain CPRS, and I think if the plaintiff, whoever, dang it, I hate civil cases. They make everything confusing. But I think if they bring in experts and people that can explain unemotionally what CRPS is like and how the hospital failed to listen to actual experts, and actual doctors who had seen Maya before, then I think that will definitely be good. I think that the surveillance tapes are going to be particularly damning. Hopefully, the, um, emotional part, I hope that it doesn't get overly emotional, but I do think that maybe having, I don't know. Look, I am overly emotional. I hate that you're having to be the voice of reason, Murph, because generally I'm the voice of reason. It's like, let's not get into the emotions, but I'm like, all the emotions, make them pay. But you're probably right, Murph. We need to be also logical. Dang it.
For therapy. They thought maybe physical therapy would help the child. Uh, and as part of that transfer process, they sent Maya's history and physical notes to TGH, and then had a phone call informing them that they thought this might be conversion disorder, this might be mental. So the first time any of these other doctors heard anything about Maya Kowalski, it was with an initial possible diagnosis that it was all in her head. The child couldn't walk, and certain symptoms were coming to the forefront by this point. Now, because Johns Hopkins couldn't figure out what the heck was happening, Maya was taken by Jack and Beata back up to Lurie's Children's Hospital in Chicago. Now, this is her former home. It was a familiar place. Lurie's had treated Maya for this asthma previously. They thought, well, let's take him back and get a second opinion. And so, and Johns Hopkins was aware that patients were going to seek a second opinion and contacted and talked to them about their theories. The doctors in Chicago couldn't figure out what was going on either. So Jack and Beata proceeded with Johns Hopkins' recommendation to take him to Tampa General. Again, the doctors in Chicago thought, well, it could be steroid myopathy, it could be generalized muscle weakness, or maybe it's all in her head, but nobody made a diagnosis of that. She went to Tampa General Hospital, and TGH, as I said, already had Johns Hopkins records. Now keep this in mind. Facts will show they already had the records. They already talked to them about what Johns Hopkins thought. All right. So Maya had inpatient comprehensive pediatric rehab and physical therapy and occupational therapy for the steroid myopathy. Now, the reason this is important is that there are certain treatments that you get for CRPS before you start ramping up on some of the medicines that are used. So you want to see if the most basic types of therapies can bring somebody around to lower it to the point where it's livable. CRPS never goes away. It is a permanent disease. It's merely controlled. But before you graduate on to more advanced treatments, you want to go through the basics. And fortunately, they had the idea of trying PT and OT, but they did not spot that it was CRPS either. They still went with Johns Hopkins theory, that it was steroid myopathy and that maybe there might be some psychological overlay. Again, they missed it. She was evaluated for adrenal insufficiency, inpatient treatment for mood and disorder. She's given Valium and Prozac. Again, this is a 9-year-old girl, 10-year-old girl. Hospital alluded to Maya or Beata falsifying or exaggerating a fall from her bed, and missed several complaints, missed although they documented several indications of CRPS. However, at that point, she was there for 4 weeks, and as it the discharge diagnosis says, history of steroid induced myopathy, noted as resolved by admission, gait disorder, impaired mobility, ADL, asthma, psychological factor affecting physical condition, conversion disorder versus factitious disorder versus others, anxiety disorder, myalgia. Now, importantly here, you'll see that it says resolved by admission, but we're going to bring in the actual physical therapist that treated her. And you will find throughout this case,
She was still in a wheelchair, so it wasn't resolved. For the love of goodness, it wasn't resolved. You can't resolve it if she's still in a wheelchair.
the facts will show that there will be a distinct difference between what the actual people who were hands-on treating Maya had to say about how she was doing and whether she's progressing, and what was put down in the medical records. The Tampa General Hospital visit was very difficult for her. At this point, she was displaying what is known as dystonia. Dystonia is where the ligaments in your, it could be anywhere, but in this case, in her ankles and feet, were contracting to the point where her feet were starting to turn in like this. This is
And to have a boot put on when your leg is doing that, and that's what they tried to do with my foot, uh, is pain beyond measure. I mean, I would have to have Mr. Mo take the boot off, and I would be in tears. There was just Mr. Mo is trying to take the door off because it's catching on the carpet right now, and I asked him that this weekend if I could have a working door, that would be awesome. So, but yes, these are clear indications of CRPS, but not many people are trained. Again, it's like one of those conditions that you learn about in medical school, but not many people have it, so you kind of learn about it and then you forget it. It's not something that a lot of people remember because you
a
don't see it.
clear indication of CRPS. Tampa General Hospital thought that maybe they should put some boots on her and see if that would correct her feet turning in. And we'll have some video from the physical
And
therapist.
you
that
can
shows
tell she's in pain. I mean,
Maya
those hurt so
attempting
much.
to walk in those boots. Maya attempting over and over again with things like trying to push her leg and saying, "Giddy up, horsey." Again, remember, it's a 9-year-old girl. And demonstrating she was trying as hard as she could to walk. The evidence will show throughout this, Maya did not want to be in a wheelchair. She did not want to be one of the kids that was looking out the window while all the other kids were playing. But Maya kept getting worse, not better. And she was still in pain. And when school starts in 2017, 15, she said she was still in pain throughout her body, and she would moan and scream in time and panic. And she kept getting weaker, weaker, and weaker. Now, Maya was in and out of Johns Hopkins throughout this period of time. Okay. And there was prescriptions for opioids, again, physical therapy, occupational therapy. Nothing was working. No one had any answers. And then a patient of Beata's, one of the infusion nurse patients, said, "This may be CRPS. I have a daughter with it, I believe. Why don't you look into seeing this?" And there are doctors here in Tampa Bay area that are specialists in this. And so she went to see Dr. Anthony Kirkpatrick at the RSD Foundation, Reflex Sympathetic Dystrophy Foundation. Now, to diagnose complex regional pain syndrome, the Budapest criteria for CRPS gives us certain specific symptoms, diagnostic criteria: persistent burning in the arms, hands, legs, feet, or another part of the body. Check. Multiple medical records will show she had that. pain can be mild or severe. We
Okay.
have actual audio recordings of my.
So here's what I want you guys to see, because this is so when these nurses see the mom acting a bit cray with the how the daughter's being treated when she first goes in, when they decide to take her out. These are all the appointments. This is all the things this child went through for 2015, the different doctors that they didn't know what they were doing or didn't know what was going on. So she was, 2000, so July 3rd, they went in and they thought she had reactive airway disease. Then 2000, or then July 6th, they thought she might have had steroid myopathy, and she ended up in a wheelchair. Then July 17th through the 20th, she had maybe psychological conversion with PT. They went to Chicago, they thought it was steroid myopathy again. Tampa Bay General thought again it was, maybe anxiety disorder, again, steroid myopathy. It wasn't resolved. They put her in boots. She was displaying dystonia. So this family has been to four for different damned hospital until they finally got to the RSD Foundation. So this mother isn't crazy. She isn't, trying to hurt her child. They have been through so many different hospitals. So that is part of the thing that these nurses, when they were going through, that I wanted to kind of write down, because the nurses jumped in with, "Oh, well, this mom must be hurting the kid because they're pains in my ass." But, I did wanna write
Lonnie,
that down
you'll
for you
see and
guys,
hear the
because
child
it does
to
make it a
determine
little
whether
easier
or
to
not
understand why
she was in
Beata
pain.
may
Swelling,
have,
sweating,
taken it.
all of those. Dramatic changes in skin color and skin temperature. Testimony is that Maya was constantly too hot or too cold. Now, people get too hot and too cold all the time, but usually they're not 9 or 10-year-old children, to the point where they're either shivering and need a blanket, and then 2 hours later are wondering, why is it so hot in here? That kind of temperature change. And of course, then blurred vision, which is already appearing in the records, dystonia, again, the movement disorder like this, and then a really confusing symptom called aldynia, which is an extreme but often inexplicable sensitivity to touch. It means that on some occasions, you can come up and squeeze Maya's arm or touch her legs and get no reaction at all. And at other times, just the thought of someone coming up to her and putting their hand near her as though they were going to touch her would give off an incredible reaction, screaming, yelling, resistance to anyone even touching her. Reason that because of the RSD, CRPS, she would feel extraordinary pain as a result. But it doesn't happen all the time, and it does.
So on really bad pain days, or I can start shaking if someone comes up on my left side, even one of the cats or the dog, uh, it just because my body tenses up thinking someone's going to come near me. I almost do it now. It's just the thought of it can start kind of the body spasms of just, okay, it's like your body goes into fight or flight mode almost, or at least for me. I speak for me only, but you can get very, very protective of that side. I've noticed I'm trying to train Fry to go to my right side now. He's a puppy and not very smart, so he likes to go to my left side, and I think he knows that I hurt on that side, so he wants to help me, but he doesn't quite get it yet because he's
Doesn't mean that when you don't have it, you're not in pain. One of the experts will testify that this is sort of like, think about it as a cancer patient or someone with an intermittent disease. You may be in remission and be doing fine and look fine to everybody outside. You may be hurting like crazy on the inside, but outside you look pretty good. And then other times you may be curled up in a fetal position and not be able to walk, talk, or move. Also a light sensitivity. Interestingly, the Budapest criteria, which are kind of the accepted criteria for CRPS, are also listed by Johns Hopkins as their diagnostic criteria for CRPS, right? So she goes and sees Anthony Kirkpatrick, Dr. Kirkpatrick, who you'll meet. Now, notice on the photograph, see the feet there turned in? Notice the lack of muscle mass on the legs. She's in a wheelchair, obviously, and that's sort of a attempted smile, but she's got sunglasses on. Now, why is a child wearing sunglasses inside at the doctor's office? Because she has a sensitivity to light caused by the CRPS. So Dr. Kirkpatrick went over the entire full history.
Um, Not so much. I will tell you on bad pain days, any sort of stimulus is too much. I usually just sit in a dark room. Uh, I can do I have a couple documentaries that I kind of just have, that I've listened to over and over again. Uh, I have one on the, James Webb Telescope, and I will just listen to that over and over again. Something about just listening to the same thing. I have tried y'all, I have tried to listen to the, like, soothing sounds stuff, but I found that just documentary but yeah, like turning on lights, that can, throw me into a full spasm. So, yeah, I do definitely have, sensitivity to light on a bad day. Now, on normal days, not so much, but on a bad day, yeah, it's just kind of anything, it I I kinda like I said, I kind of liken it to being a cup and you are already so full of water that even adding a drop more is way too much. So, that's how it feels like to
A
me.
list of symptoms and therapies tried. He did objective testing, including pain threshold test, range of motion test. We'll actually have the videos from before and after where you can see that before the treatments she eventually had, and a part of the
I'm sorry, GT.
issues in this case, she could barely get her
Well,
hand,
that's why I got the
arm up to
expensive
here.
glasses
And then
with
you'll see
the,
after the therapies that they
coding
ultimately
for
complained
the,
about that she can put her
computery
arm
deal.
in completely over the other side. And the diagnosis was CRPS. Now, Dr. Kirkpatrick did not say, all right, let's just go into some heavy duty pain meds or anything else. Again, he said, let's try some physical therapy and what's known as warm water therapy, which is essentially where you use a very warm pool or bath or something and you do it in there to loosen up the muscles. A little different, but again, physical therapy. He did not recommend out of the box any sort of pain meds. That didn't work. And that's when he introduced them to a revolutionary use of an old drug called ketamine and the ability to uh, break the chain. See, CRPS involves
Take some time,
a
rest. Gigi,
problem
you
in the
can always do the
pathways
replay
between the
crew,
pain
no
centers in different
worries.
parts of the body and the brain. Usually, when someone injures themselves, you sprain a finger or something out, it hurts like heck. But over time, right, it starts hurting less and less and less. And pretty soon after a while, you just kind of forget about it. That doesn't happen with CRPS because of a problem as yet not understood, which is why we don't have any cure. The pain relay, the circle, the loop here of feedback is getting bigger and bigger and bigger until what was once a tiny little fracture or a tiny little sprain or whatever you want to call it turns into something that is the worst pain known to medical science. I'll talk about that in a moment. And ketamine, which has been around since the 1950s, it's FDA approved. It's used mostly as an anesthetic, and it's not an opioid. It doesn't work like an opioid. But for some reason, not fully understood, it breaks this feedback loop, and people start getting better. Not all of them, but a very high percentage get better. So there's actually, I think, do we have the audio on this? So this is one of the
Alienware
initial
man
visits with
on
Dr. Kirkpatrick
media.
discussing the use of the ketamine infusions. And I want you to concentrate on what this mom, who's also a nurse, is asking about.
Who in your practice administers the ketamine?
I do.
You do, okay.
And I'm ACLS certified also. I have to be. To do
Yeah, you
kids.
have to be.
Well, PALS, you gotta have the
Mhm.
PALS and all that stuff.
CLS, yeah.
And we have a pediatric code card back there. You know, we have to do all that stuff if we're gonna do
Good.
children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was my next
They're-
question.
they're
Do you have a pediatric crash card?
No, we have to,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, that's a standard of care. You have to.
Mhm.
Now, Beata knew all about how to keep her daughter healthy, not this disease, but how to keep her daughter healthy and how to protect her daughter. And notice in there, one of the first things she asked about, is there an ACLS crash cart? Are there all the different equipment that you might need, even during an infusion, because remember, she's an infusion nurse, in case anything could go wrong. Now, here's the McGill, pain scale. This is interesting. I had no idea until I reviewed this, but this right here, as you can see, this goes over, and this was developed in Australia. It's been around for a long, long time. It's adopted by about every hospital, every medical association. And this describes the different pain levels according to description by patients and every other objective finding that one can make. And you'll see at the top that CRPS is the most painful. It was actually developed at the University of Montreal, Canada by Dr. Waslasco, I guess. And most of the clinical trials were, I believe, in Australia. Symptoms of CRPS, we've gone over those. It strikes mostly females in the population between the ages of 7 and 21. It is known for initial symptoms that are inexplicable. However, upon close review and a differential diagnosis to rule out other things and consider neurological disorders, this is one of them. And if you can identify a few of these symptoms, our experts will say CRPS should have been brought into the mix very quickly. That did not happen here. All right, so from October 6th through 8th, she has her first ketamine infusion with Dr. Kirkpatrick, a follow-up, and the first infusion went well and helped to get Maya out of pain, and there was a lot of encouragement over that. He wasn't pushing for more ketamine. He's simply trying to instruct on a conservative approach, warm water therapy. Let's try the ketamine again. They tried it again, and again, got some good relief, but not for very long. Maybe for a week, 10 days. But not what they were looking for, to bring this child back.
So it looks like they were referred to different doctors. Again, this is not a normal. I think there are 100,000 people in the country. Last I checked, I could be very wrong. Numbers are not my thing. 100,000 people in the country, or maybe they're up to 1 million in the world that have this. So again, it is not well known. So this is not something that a lot of people deal with. So it's just kind of kismet or luck that she happens to be in the same uh, area as the RSD Foundation, or the Reflex Sympathetic Dystrophy Foundation is just right where she is in Tampa, Florida. And that's how she was able to catch up and kind of link up with this doctor who is at the foremost of this kind of therapy, this kind of treatment, and knows a lot about this.
Back to being a normal kid, right? So, at this point, Dr. Kirkpatrick says, well, she might need more and frequent
I fake it really well some
of
days,
these infusions.
but
So why don't you
I'm
go
trying
over
to
to
be
Johns
better
Hopkins
at asking for
and
help.
visit for a PICC line placement? And so on November 4th, she goes back
But
to
thank
Johns
you very
Hopkins
much.
for a PICC line placement. And the diagnosis over there accepted is CRPS. And so Johns Hopkins itself does the PICC line. PICC line is basically a tube that's put in so you can do the infusions a lot easier without trying to find a vein. All right, so, and she begins therapy because, again, everybody wants to find out, is this really anything exaggerated by Maya? Is there a psychological component to this? Let's just make sure. So Maya starts with a therapist by the name of Rebecca Johnson. And I believe you'll hear from Ms. Johnson or Michelle Rogers, who is her partner there, about those. Maya was never determined to have any type of conversion disorder or factitious disorder by any psychiatrist or psychologist, except that as
No, so she went to Johns Hopkins first. First she was so the fact pattern kind of goes that out of nowhere on July 3rd, she starts having random ridiculous pain. They take her to the ER. She's back at the ER from the 4th, I think, to the 7th or something, 4th or so to the 10th. And they can't figure out why she's in so much pain, why she can't walk. Uh, she goes to several different different hospitals up to Chicago, Tampa Bay General, other places. They cannot figure out what's going wrong. Finally, the doctor or the mother, Beata, has a patient that she does in-home infusions with, and they said, "My daughter has someone I know has CRPS. The RSD Foundation is here. Maybe take her to the RSD Foundation." It sounds like that might be what it is. She goes to the RSD Foundation, and he diagnoses that a doctor there diagnoses her with RSD. Then they send her back to Johns Hopkins so she can get a PICC line, because if she is doing weekly ketamine infusions that kind of help break that pain cycle, uh, it's just easier for her to have a PICC line, if that makes sense, BL Blazy.
part of CRPS,
Oh,
there
thank you.
can be
Oh,
certain
I'm so sorry.
symptoms of conversion, which is,
Oh, wait, yes.
how do you
I
explain
am
this?
having a better day.
The
Thank you.
feelings of pain become so exaggerated, this allodynia, that the patient is anticipating pain before it actually happens. So she goes and has the therapy, but still nothing is working and nothing is really getting her out of the extreme pain on a long-term basis. So Dr. Kirkpatrick, and you'll hear from Dr. Kirkpatrick here to explain all of this. Unfortunately, in the United States, the procedure that had been shown to work the best for intractable CRPS, long-term ketamine infusion under general anesthesia, a medical coma for 3, 4, 5 days, is not performed in the United States. It's performed in Germany. It's performed in Mexico. It had been around since approximately the 1990s. It had essentially 100% rate of safety. That is, no one had ever died from it. And it had a very high rate of success. There is a physician, a University of Texas trained anesthesiologist, Dr. Fernando Cantu, who's going to fly here from Mexico to describe the process. And it involves, again, infusions of ketamine over a very long period of time. The idea being that it causes the brain to reset so that you don't have this feedback loop causing the pain. The first one in late November, 19th through the 23rd, there is a high dose infusion. And what do you know? The lesions begin to heal. And there's a slight less turning out of the feet. And yet the pain was still not where they wanted it. So Maya stayed there, and then on November 19th through the 23rd, she went through another high-dose ketamine infusion. Now, during this period of time, other than during the middle of the infusion process, there were absolutely no negative signs from Maya. She had a brief increase in her liver function results, but only, we're talking, for a matter of hours. And as soon as the ketamine infusion was done, they went right back. And it's important to note that other than at that time and through all of her ketamine treatments, Maya's liver functions, which is the things you look at if you've got a medication like this and you want to see, is it hurting somebody? You look at the liver functions, and her liver functions have stayed normal throughout. And you'll see the medical records to show that. All right. So then, a miracle. By December 28th, Maya's lesions are noticeably less. Her feet are starting to not be as turned out. In fact, by the end of January, and we'll show you the films, she's actually able to get back in the pool. You can see a picture of her here in, I believe, late January. And this is her. You'll notice the feet looking better. She's on Kyle's shoulders there. You'll notice a real smile coming up. She's able to do her warm water therapy.
See, and
But she's
right here you see all these sensations. So for her to be able to tolerate not only the water all over her skin, someone touching her legs, and to have all of this sensation where she's in a pool with water, with someone touching her, all of these things that you wouldn't take for you would take for granted normally, for her to be able to do all of this with the amount of pain that she's had, this is this is miraculous. I mean, I you cannot understate how insanely awesome this is for this to have worked.
still is having some pain. And the idea
I
here was
mean,
to get
you're
this kid
never
out of
going
the
to go back to
wheelchair, right?
100%,
They
but this
wanted to get
is
her out of the wheelchair. And to get her out of the wheelchair, they really needed to get the feet totally back and they needed to get the pain levels back so it wasn't so painful when she walked so she could build up her legs. That was the idea. So they go back
and
to
the
Johns
warm
Hopkins.
water therapy
Okay.
is amazing.
All right. Central port means there's an operation and there's the note. Placement implanted central venous port. That's a tube under her arm to allow her to continue high-level fusions, not like Mexico.
So, it could be I know that mine tend to be it tends to curl in because of leg spasm, but I've noticed since having CRPS, my foot does tend to just kind of curl in that way. The doctor look, if okay, if if the, spinal stimulator does not work, the test run, I will be switching doctors. I believe there are doctors up in Indianapolis that do work with ketamine, and I would like to work with them. I didn't realize I picked the only puritanical doctor in the San Francisco of Indiana, Bloomington. Look, if you live in Indiana, you know, but it is the most hippy trippy San Francisco place in Indiana, which again, on a level of San Francisco is about a 0.5, but it's what we have down here. He doesn't believe in ketamine, he doesn't think it works, but he also doesn't know jack crap really about CRPS, and a lot of doctors don't. And that's the frustration, is that finding doctors that know a lot about this means that you probably have to fly down to Florida, to be honest, or go to the Mayo Clinic or, wait a long time. Uh, it just it's frustrating, and then there's insurance, and there's a lot of things that are hurdles, unfortunately. So, if the spinal stimulator doesn't work, and I hope it does, then Uh, I will be looking to change doctors and hopefully, find one that is willing to look at ketamine, because that seems to be, according to all the things I've researched, one of the real like you said, it's one of the only things that they have found that really does close that loop. Now, the other part that is scary for me as a mom and has been illustrated, by kind of the long arm of freaking DCFS, um, is that, I have to maintain a lot of documentation now because well, you'd think, but some doctors You should have seen his eyes nearly pop out when I said I didn't wanna take the pain medicine. I was like, "No, I don't wanna take the pain medicine. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I'd much rather get along with certain herbal medications, uh, that are legal in my state." Um, however, because it is such a niche sort of thing, they have a certain, you know, it's hard to find doctors that sort of specialize in that, and if they specialize in that, yeah, yeah, in fairness. Or the drug testing company too.
go, but outpatient procedures. And she has a
So and
number
this
of
is the
them through the
other
course.
this is where I think that the hospital has no defense because this is in 2016. So they are already admitting in 2016 that this child has reflex sympathetic dystrophy. So they know in 2016 she has complex regional pain syndrome. I mean,
Of the next
I'd call it a
9
smoking gun,
months.
but I'd be wrong.
Through the course of this, and with a doctor named Dr. Hannah, who Dr. Kirkpatrick recommended, Dr. Cantu recommended, because frankly, ketamine is incredibly expensive and it's not covered by health insurance. So Dr. Hannah was set up to do these on a regular basis. Oh, yeah. Oh, I better get going. Okay, so Maya goes back to Johns Hopkins, and Dr. Anthony Kreisman, who had seen her before the long-term ketamine infusion, quote, ketamine coma, and they commented on how withdrawn and how much pain she's in. Listen to what he says on May 11th, after about 30 of these infusions and the long-term infusion. She is a completely different child from when last examined. By that, I mean she is not in any pain. She is not moaning. She is smiling and interactive. She is very engaged. She moves spontaneously in her wheelchair without incurring pain. Through the course of that summer, because the ketamine is so expensive, they tried 2 other therapies. One's known as hyperbaric. You can see it right here, extreme high oxygen content, which has been known to help some CRPS patients. She also tries the IVIG treatment to increase her immune system because it's believed that CRPS can be,
And he's a
the immune
gamer, but
system
he
may
is
be part
married,
of
I think.
CRPS. And by the end of the summer, she is almost back on her feet. This is in 2016, around August of 2016. Maya is almost back on her feet. We have video of her actually using that as kind of a jungle gym to try to strengthen up her arms and her legs. Everyone is very excited. Everybody is looking forward to Maya getting on her feet. And then she has what they hope to be a minor relapse. It turns into a fairly major relapse. And she goes back and has larger ketamine doses with Dr. Hannah on October 5 and 6. And she has some gastrointestinal problems and a lot of pain in the midsection. There are stories that you will hear about her screaming at night. She could not take the pain in her stomach anymore. At one point, the screaming was so intense that the family got walkie-talkie, so the family could stay all the way over on this side of the house and Maya over here because no one could sleep. So we communicated by walkie-talkie. All right, so they decided on the 7th, October 7th, a key date, to take her to Johns Hopkins ER. Now, the reason was that we had Hurricane Matthew tracking up.
Now, I will say that CRPS, what I found with it with mine is that it can be very much linked to weather patterns. If we have a storm coming in, if it is going to be cold and rainy, I know that day is pretty much shot. Um, I remember vividly the kids last year for spring break. I remember sitting with Mr. Moe and opening up the weather thing and bursting into tears because it was supposed to be cold and raining the entire week. And just knowing that those were gonna be really hard days for me, and I wasn't really gonna be able to do anything with the kids, and feeling like such a failure as a mom because, those were just gonna be such hard days and, you know, feeling like I'd let the kids down for their entire spring break. Sorry, Fry managed to get an apple somehow, and, now he and Griffin are playing, who will be smarter, the Fry or Apple. So, we were able to do different things, but I just remember feeling heartbroken about, how limited I was. So,
Haven't
definitely.
been in Florida long enough to
No,
hardly put the
we
blur together. I believe it's Hurricane Matthew tracking up the eastern seaboard here.
so, I've definitely learned how to look at it differently, but it has been hard to "Hey, guys, out, please. Hey, guys, just because I don't have a door doesn't mean come in. Out. I am streaming." Lord, if it isn't the kids, it's the Fry.
Getting winds like, I don't know, 35 to 50 miles an hour. To people from Florida, it's like, wake us up when it's a Cat 4. And, but the Kowalskis were from Chicago and had never experienced this before. They had visions of like the movie Twister going around in their head. And so all of the ERs and everything were closed. So they took her up to St. Pete to the ER. And Maya is seen by 5 different doctors and groups of nurses and social workers from the ER. And she comes in about 8:46 in the morning and she's crying and screaming and she's in a fetal position, clutching her stomach, and she is just out of her mind. And the ER doctors there start to react rather negatively to this. Beata comes in approximately 2 to 3 hours later and once again goes through the history, which Jack has been trying to relate, of all of the different visits to Johns Hopkins and all the different treatments and how everything has failed. And the only thing that has worked has been the long-term ketamine infusions. And we can try this. Can we try that? Can we try a pump? Can we try, what can we do to get our daughter out of pain? For some reason, the doctors there either review all the past records and the some 7 to 8 to 9 prior visits, and the fact that she's had surgery there to have a port implanted to help her with the ketamine infusion. But for some reason, they decide that that isn't it at all. She really doesn't have CRPS. That the mom must be making all of this up. That this is, as a nurse who we think is the one who actually made this diagnosis, Munchausen by proxy, textbook Munchausen by proxy. Imagine this is an ER, the child's back there, the parents.
Find this Karen. Find this Karen and put her in an ISO cube with a glitter bomb and make her sit with Daryl Brooks. I'm throwing it out there as a public service and or watch all the Sharknado movies while Baby Shark is playing in the background.
Pulling their hair out,
Allegedly.
trying to explain to the hospital, this is what Jack will testify to, and Beata is trying to explain to them in the ER where they've been about 5 times before, exactly all the history that's going back, that's already in.
Because I, as a mom, would have been doing the same thing, like, "We have been here 10 times before. You guys put in the goddamn port. You guys look in your damned records." I would have all the words. I'd be like, "Look in your records, find me your manager. If I have to talk to the director of the hospital, get someone down here from management right now." And usually I am not the "let me talk to your manager" person. Usually I am not. Usually I'm not. Usually I respect nurses. Usually I respect people. I understand how hard they are working. Usually I am never the I want to talk to your manager person. But you have my daughter in pain and no one is listening to me and I know what the hell is going on. I would mama bear right up on them.
Their records, including records from the other hospital. Everything's there. For some reason, the doctors, nurses, and social workers ignore all of that and decide this is not CRPS, that this is the child is making it up and the parents are making it up. And then this must be child abuse by the parents. Now, the court has told you that there's pretty much a hair trigger on suspicions. And so they make the call, and that's not part of this case. You're supposed to make the call. Slightest different suspicion.
They are
You're supposed to
mandated
make the
support
call. So
or
that's not
mandated reporters.
bad
I'll
thing.
give them that.
Whether it was right or not at that moment.
What they are not, and I'm going to use the word, so clip it if you are, is mandated cunts, and that's what they were doing.
The case is about what happens after that and the failure to diagnose previously so that none has ever happened. Maya, they try to take Maya home after the first night. They're told that they need to observe the child overnight. Fine. But by the second day, Maya is still in pain. They do knock her out with a lot of drugs to get rid of the initial pain. And they give her ketamine. So the next day, she's much calmer. And so then they decide that Maya cannot go home. They decide that taking her home is AMA, against medical advice. And they say, if you try to take your daughter home, we're calling security. So the Kowalskis don't have much choice. They end up leaving. And the next thing they know, they're off to the races and Maya is an unbelievable journey up through and including the death of Beata. Now, what you'll notice in the records, again, the records paint a glowing report of Maya. Just how great she's doing, how much she enjoys things. What a great stay she's having. She's getting this, she's getting that. The only thing she was getting to do was play the piano. Maya knows how to play the piano. She got to play the piano, and she got to draw pictures. Every once in a while,
I'm sure that
send
made
a
up
letter.
for, not having
If
her
she wanted
mother
to
or
talk to her
family.
mom, it had to be on a supervised call. She could only see her dad and her brother on pre-arranged and monitored situations. If she wanted to see, they hired an attorney, obviously. If she wanted to see her attorney, the nurses would demand that the door stay open. She never had a private moment with an attorney.
Who the hell are these nurses? I don't think so, Nurse Ratchet. What the hell? Attorney-client privilege? I'm confused. Well, probably. Okay, Murph's Turf, you're right. You're right, Murph. Keep it. I'm just saying, keep
They're
us on the straight and narrow, Murph's
Polish
Turf,
Roman
because
Catholic, which is about as Roman Catholic as you can get, and have a very close relationship with the priest. So the priest went in to see Maya, and he will testify that when he arrived, he was told that he could not see Maya, and that she had had her religious artifacts taken away. We have a photograph of it. And he asked about this, and they said it's because we believe her mom is controlling her through religion. And so he was not allowed to see her that day. And it took a few other attempts. And then finally he was allowed in, but he was told no religious procedures. You come say hello, no religious procedures. I told you already about the 42 hours of being placed in a dark.
wait a minute. Wait, in America's freedom dong. Pursuit of happiness, freedom to worship as you something in the Constitution, something, something, freedom of worship. No, no, doesn't sound like anything in our country. What the
And
crap,
Joel, this is a
people?
new type of EEG, Maya. We're gonna really figure this out if this is in your mind or not. No, it wasn't. It was the surveillance room. And again, the goal, because these doctors had somehow gotten confused to think that CRPS includes paralysis. Paralysis is not part of CRPS at all. And yet they were trying to prove that Maya could actually get out of bed, that she was faking it, that she was sitting in that wheelchair all the time, just, I don't know what reason, but she was faking all this. It actually, when nobody was watching, Maya was getting up out of that chair and walking around everywhere. So they put the commode just a little bit out of reach, right? Figuring when she thinks nobody's watching, she'd get up and they said, go to the bathroom, go over there. Well, that didn't happen. And you'll see video of Maya having to be carried over to the commode. Of course, her skin started to show the lesions again. Maya started on a dive, badly, badly getting worse. Depressed. The lesions
Oh,
are forming.
rabbit.
You'll see them. Yeah, here, now they just may look like scratches here, but you can't see too much of the stuff on the back. What you'll notice through the series of photographs, and thank goodness Dad here took photographs of Maya's lesions. And you'll see those photographs, and I want you to compare them to the medical records because you'll see on the dermatological reports.
Yeah, I'll have to ask or not a doctor, a lawyer, because I would think that the blockade on religion would be something akin to almost a constitutional thing. But if they truly believed that the mother was using religion in a nefarious way, I guess they could have specified to the court that they believed religion was being used in a nefarious way and to block it, um, very in that one specified case. I could be wrong, but I think they maybe could tailor it, or they were on a power trip and they were douches. I mean, I could be very wrong, but I'm gonna go with the douche canoe defense.
You'll see skin normal, and yet you'll have photographs from that day showing lesions. On January 6th, they decided that they needed photographs to prove that Maya really didn't have as many lesions as they said.
Why does this man look perpetually confused? Sir, you are defending evil. I know you're confused. I am confused why you are doing so too. This man is boss hog okay with it. I'm just you look confused and you look confusioned. So I was just making sure you understand. Uh
So
well,
they
I'm trying to use
brought
less
someone else
cursey
in,
words.
and we have better pictures.
I
You can see a little bit of Maya's face there. They claim, oh, this didn't bother her at all. There was no.
eh, they are holding her my 10-year-old daughter, she's going to be 11 soon, but well, actually, she's going to be 13 soon. I'm spacing out. She would be horrified to take these photos. No, no, she doesn't wanna take these aren't photos are not to medical standard, first of all, it's not even halfway anatomically correct placement of her body. Second of all, this is a preteen girl. I you are all just horrible.
No authorization from the family, no notification to the family. Maya was
I hope she
screaming bloody
squeezed her
murder
hand.
not to do this because it hurt. They took off her clothes except for her training bra and her shorts, pulled down her shorts, pulled up her shorts there to take photographs of her. Now, their testimony is, oh, this wasn't bad on her at
Oh,
all. She
okay,
was
yes.
fine with it. No, what she's told is if you don't let us take photographs, you're not going to see your mom. That's what they told her.
Alright. All of the boob punches, both sides, double tap, allegedly in Minecraft Centipede, Pac-Man, and Cubits.
So They
And
end up taking
Minesweeper.
photographs. And somehow, where are the photographs? We've only got a few. We do have photographs from the father at the time, however. So by this point, it's pretty bad. Let's talk just briefly about Beata. During this period of time, Beata is only allowed to talk to her daughter. Hopefully, we'll be able to play some of the tapes where we'll be able to hear Beata trying to talk to her daughter. But they put certain things off limits, like, how are you doing? How is your treatment? How is your medication? Things like that.
Ma'am, you are defending evil. Stop looking over at the other side. No. Sir, I feel like we have a boss hog moment. All I need is I need someone to get Oh, okay, well, let's see if I can put it up to 1.25 because I am getting a bit
No, you
tired,
can't talk
so
about that. Not allowed to talk about that. They're the most mundane things you can imagine on these telephone calls. We are allowed to use them. And in those, you'll hear one of the social workers, Kathy Beatty, who was assigned Maya. Now, she was a social worker from one floor, but wherever Maya went, Kathy Beatty followed. And we have the trail of emails and notes leading from notification to the general counsel through risk management on down to one of the senior doctors, down to Beatty about doing this stuff, including
I need
what
to
you just saw
find,
in the photograph.
if
We'll
I
prove
can
they knew it at
find,
the highest levels.
the opening couple bars to,
Beata is going
oh
freaking
gosh,
nuts. The evidence will show.
freaking what's the
They
name
find
of
out
it?
that Beatty's had some disciplinary problems. They find out, kind of through the grapevine, how bad things are for Maya. They find out about the lesions. Now her feet are completely turned in. And Maya has become so weak, the CRPS has developed to the point where she can't sit up straight. Okay.
The Dukes of
Now,
Hazzard. I
uh,
might play that,
on the evening
for
of
his
January
whenever
7th,
he's talking and not get struck. I might figure it out.
Beata, they were going to a party. Jack and Kyle were going to a birthday party, I think. And Beata had been not acting herself at all for a number of days. And she didn't want to go to the birthday party. She didn't really want to go anywhere for a long time. The only thing she did was go to work. She was withdrawn. She and Jack had been having screaming fights because Jack did not want her to be so absorbed in this. He was more of the, let's just try to get her out of there, work her out. And Beata was trying everything, legal, social, every possible way to get her child out, and her child was not coming out. And she found out through several sources the condition that Maya was in and what was happening to Maya. And on that evening, once they were out, she decided to take some belts and put them together, go out to the garage, make a noose, put a stand below her feet to be able to reach it. She took an IV of saline solution and put the IV in her arm and left a cell phone with a note that said, retribution, retaliation, out. And she left 2 suicide notes, which we'll try to bring before you, telling you about why she did it. It took probably about 22 minutes, according to pathologists, to strangle to death.
Okay. Now again, I understand why they have Maya up front. I understand strategically why they have Maya up front. I really, really do. But at this point, she needs to be back there with her dad, is my opinion. As a mom. That's just
She
me.
kicked the stand out from under her. When Jack and Kyle got home, they thought that she was sleeping in another room, which they did a lot, because they weren't getting along, frankly. And so nobody did that. And then Beata's brother was coming in that night. He came in and just went to sleep. Got up the next morning, walked out into the garage, I guess looking for something. And at first he thought it was a Halloween costume or something. And he looks closer and it's his sister. And he, of course, just completely screams out. Jack comes in, sees his wife with Kyle right behind him. Kyle was, I don't know, we'll ask him how much he was able to see. 911 call made. You'll hear that. And Beata is taken down. We'll have some, we're not going to get gross on them. I'm not going to try to upset you too much on the photos, but we will show you some of the photos, right?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, They have to bring it up. This is part of the trial, unfortunately. Unfortunately, this is part of why they are suing. I mean, this hospital did everything they could to destroy this woman, to say that she was abusing her daughter. I mean, not only medically, but emotionally and physically. So, they have to bring this up. They have to bring up the fact that they, were going there's ugh.
Now, after
I mean,
that,
you can tell the
Jack
lawyers
says, let my daughter go.
just
If Beata is the big reason here, if she's the Munchausen by proxy, why keep Maya? No, no. It takes another week and a half, and Maya, let me get this right. Maya's actually told in the hospital that her mom's dead. Johns Hopkins believes it's still in her head, and there's a text that goes around about how Maya's now better
oh, yeah,
off.
this is gonna piss you the F off.
Between two of the doctors, you'll hear testify. Finally, after a lot of effort, Maya gets to go home. Now, I'm not sure if I got the photograph on this, but I'll show you a photograph. You can see on the ride home, she's got stuffed animals underneath her, and she's slumped over like this because she's so weak she can't keep herself up. Through the course, then,
And to be honest, Maya probably wants to be there to be the voice for her mom. I mean, this is the mom that when her son was born with low platelets, she called her or she, signed herself out of that hospital, went to another hospital, pulled that blood herself, and then gave it back to her son. I think Maya and and her brother probably think I can do no less for my mom. So while this is painful and terrible and heart-wrenching for them, I think they think that they can do no less for the mother that did that for her son than they can do no less for her. So the amount of courage and real bravery that it's taking them to sit there and knowing that she is probably going to have the mother of all flare-ups this entire time, I mean, I can't imagine. Not to mention the douchery that's gonna come next, but I will
all
be,
right. So
watching that with,
the
Sal,
hospital
so
will
we'll be
now come in
making
and
fun
tell
of
you just how
everyone.
great their therapies were. We'll show you the records, and they were not doing any therapies with Maya. They were warehousing the child. Maya gets home, and with her parents' care, on one other thing, the hospital doesn't want any more use of ketamine ever again. We'll get into the details of that. So just
Fuck you.
using the old,
Sorry, excuse me, guys,
regular,
sorry.
and largely
But
ineffective pain meds, this child manages through warm water therapy and being home with support and love about 8 months to get out of the wheelchair. Now, folks, I want you to compare that to the time after they first learned about how to use the ketamine, how fast it took to get her ready to roll.
so they're like, "The one thing that really works, hey, sweetie, the one thing that really works, the only thing that's been able to help you, see that thing right there, that giant thing that's gonna help you? Um, yeah, no, never again, not for you. You know, you've only lost your mom, we've only destroyed your life and shattered everything, and that one thing that's gonna help you, nah, screw you people.
Right? Out of
Sorry."
pain. This child does it in extreme pain. So she's on crutches here about spring of August of 2017, and it takes another
Sorry, guys, I know
year
I
until
generally
Maya
try to
can
not
walk and
curse,
insists that
but
she's on crutches.
ugh,
One tough
I
cookie,
have no
and
idea.
we'll talk about just how tough she really is to be able to go through all this. Uh, Things go well for another couple of years, but in 2020, she has another bit of bad news about her schooling and has yet another relapse. This time, again, similar to the one in 2016, and similar, it was an emotional issue. The one right before she went into Johns Hopkins, one of the best I have. Pretty much the same type of symptoms, and she ends up back in the hospital, and she has to be put on a feeding tube because she's in so much pain she can't feed herself. So, fortunately, after about a week there,
Why the hell did she have to go back to the same damn hospital? There are not other hospitals in Florida? The hell is wrong? I would have moved out of the state. Of course, I would have there are well, let's just say I have a deep and abiding love for our national hero, the Killdozer man, and I would have learned to weld, allegedly. So that might have been my motivation to learn how to walk again, but I'm a terrible person, so, yeah, this is
She was able to get well enough to come out and proceed on her way. And again, had to start over in some ways and was able to rejoin a lot of her life. Without her mother, Jack lost a wife, Kyle lost a mother. And the effects on the family are, well, you'll just have to listen to hear. So we're asking for damages for the physical injury, the overwhelming pain, not simply the ketamine alone, but from the aggravation of the ketamine. Let me talk about this. Now, the CRPS started before Johns Hopkins ever got there.
I don't know, they'll
But-
probably have to get into it.
The evidence from every doctor that's a specialist in it will tell you that it is vitally important during the first episode of CRPS that you properly manage it in order to prevent an aggravation of the disease to the point where it's going to reappear and you will have longer, more frequent, and more devastating episodes down the road.
Well, damn it, how come no one told me this?
The ketamine's nickname is the suicide disease. So the law is then that if you take a symptom, an illness or injury, and you aggravate it to the point where that person has a lot more pain, a lot more trouble with it, that unless some doctor can come in and identify the
They
percentages
might
back and forth,
he might have
You're
been
on the
threatened
hook.
that if you don't take it
all the ramifications.
if he didn't take her back, that he could have faced more while they were in that could be a very fair point, Mads. If he didn't take her back.
So
I
now we've got long-term effects, and we're
I
going to
officially hate
give you
Johns
mortality
Hopkins.
tables, so you'll be
You
able to
were
know how many
named
years
after a
out.
toilet, John.
I'll give you some formulas on how to try to do this. I'm just an advisor. You ultimately will make all the decisions here, right? But I'll try to
One
help with some formulas of how you can
bajillion
calculate those things. It's a
dollars,
difficult job. We're
okay?
talking about this in what here, right? All right. So we'll talk about each and every one of these. We'll talk about the physical injuries. We'll talk about, and Jack has, I haven't spent any time on Jack, but we'll get into that again on the testimony. Suffice to say, it's been devastating to not have his wife and the mother of his children. Kyle's lost a mom and the effects on him. So we'll talk about the pain and suffering, the mental anguish that you will carry around, they will carry around from not having a mother and knowing your mother killed herself for you. And we'll have inconvenience. Now, Beata was a nurse, so she could take care of herself and she could take care of her family. She's not around. Loss of capacity to enjoy life. There's this thing called alhedonia, which means that you lose the ability to have pleasure out of things that once gave you pleasure. Maya tried figure skating. She won't do that anymore. Maya's not going back to gymnastics. Maya doesn't want to play piano anymore. The family doesn't want to go back to the church. And the family is having an extremely difficult time staying in the house, obviously. There's diminished earning capacity because what happens on your job if every year or two or every 6 months you have this debilitating episode where you can't work and you can't explain how long it's going to be and whether you're going to be able to do anything at home or not. And like I talked about, the aggravation of the pre-existing symptoms and the illness. So then we ask you to consider punitive damages. Our
All
argument
of
is
them.
this, that these actions are so completely and utterly
Just say fucked.
it's designed to deter, not only here, but in the future. And it's designed to punish, right? And so your decision there would be predicated on how much money does it take if we got to that point? What alters behavior of companies like that? So that's your job. Is to figure a little bit out about this, a lot about this. And so I was trying to figure out where the defense is going on this. I think it is that from their doctor's point of view, those doctors in the ER and hospitalist view, Beata was crazy. And they thought she was going to try to hurt her daughter. And explain why. Mine did not come in with a bruise, a bump, a cut, a scrape, any bad medical tests, no bad blood work. And yet they deduced from their discussions with her over the course of a few hours that it was actually her claim. We will show you that up until this point, periodically through the latter probably 10 years of her life, Beata had periods of anxiety, and she got treated with things like Xanax for that. And she had 2 periods of depression where she had some anti-depression stuff, never long-term and all situational to events in her life. After January of 2016, and her daughter had been through this, she sought counseling and maintained counseling to try to get through what she was going through. We'll have Dr. Tashana Duncan come in. Circumstances about her. She's a PhD psychologist who knew the story and did an intensive amount of research, and she says there was nothing wrong with Beata whatsoever. And not a single psychiatrist or psychologist is going to come in and tell you any different here. And we doubt you're going to hear anything from a psychologist or psychiatrist to say that that Maya was making any of this up, or that she was suffering from factitious disorder or conversion disorder. We doubt, seriously, you'll hear that. The defense does come up with
Oh,
something.
no. Yeah, that's fine.
They say that the amount of ketamine that the CRPS doctors were using, and the fact of the ketamine, as they call it, the ketamine coma. It's kind of, in this case, that's their boogeyman. It's the ketamine coma. You'll hear one of the doctors say that that's the reason why they should be able to take Maya away from the parents, just because they didn't think that was that was met the Johns Hopkins standard of care. So because it didn't meet their idea of how to treat CRPS, their argument is that justifies taking the child away. So what else? I think they're going to try to say that because their medical records said CRPS here and there early on and then down the road, that they were justified for billing $536,000 for a disease that they vigorously denied she ever had, and instead was always in her head. I think what they're going to say there is that, well, because some of the treatments we use can be used for CRPS, see, we can bill it. We have a memo, an internal memo that says that they actually make.
So, the ketamine, and he explained this earlier in his defense, but they're not quite sure how it works. But in some patients with CRPS, what ketamine seems to do is CRPS seems to be a never-ending feedback loop of the pain, sort of. So if you step on a rock and you feel pain in your foot, that pain signal is looped up to your brain. Your brain says, "You moron, stop stepping on the rock," and you stop stepping on the rock. In the CRPS, what happens is that loop never stops firing. So even if you stop stepping on the rock, your body says pain, pain, more pain, more pain, more pain, and that loop never stops. Now, what they're not sure how it does it, but that quiets that loop for a while and allows the brain to reset. They're not sure how it does that. They ha So that's kind of the, standard that the RSD, complex regional pain syndrome, used to be called, reflex sympathetic dystrophy. Uh So that is kind of one of the treatments that they think is really kind of cutting edge. Now, Boss Hogg is about to come up. I will not be listening to Boss Hogg without a guest because I will just be using curse words and making fun of him. And I do want to be somewhat objective and give you somewhat of a good idea. So I will be having Sal or someone else on probably tomorrow at some point in time to do the hospital side of whatever this is. Now, I will say that this particular lawyer rambled a lot. I liked all the things he said, but he had it kind of jumbly. I wish he would have had it much more focused and maybe clearer. It felt a little bit story jumbly narrative-y. I wish he would have cleaned it up. I He has a lot of notes in like different ways. It's all very disorganized. And this might be his just his style, but it kind of I have a feeling that hospital guy, boss hog, is going to be, very linear, very, "Oh, shucks, ma'am, we didn't know what we were looking at. It's all real confusing over here. We How were we to know what they were doing? It was all dangerous ketamine and such." So it it I liked how he did it. It was very conversational. It was very, you know, non-lawyerly, but I'm worried about how it's going to juxtapose between I'm sure, Boss Hogg is going to be very lawyerly, and I don't know how it's going to play.
Made a conscious decision to up the billing rate to CRPS because it's so much higher. See, CRPS takes a lot of effort to treat. You need occupational therapy, you need warm water therapy, you need physical therapy, you need psychological therapy. You got a lot of different things that go into it. And so it's very expensive. But if you're just, evidence will show, warehousing a child while billing for CRPS, well. And you'll hear from the actual experts about ketamine infusions, why it takes so many, and what you do to determine dosage. It's called titration. Maya had pre-existing treatment by a drug that broke down to ketamine. So for what us would feel like, a Jimmy Buffett concert level of beers, to Maya would feel like 2 beers. And so that's kind of the relevance of, not a very good one, but the relevance of the ability of the steroids to break down the.
Yes, the mother of the I would recommend going back and listening to this because it will be explained. I do explain, kind of what CRPS is for me and then kind of go through, what it feels like, and then, this family lost their mother to, suicide, and they are, uh, basically suing the hospital for, accusing the mother of Munchausen by proxy, uh, for the daughter having complex regional pain syndrome and using ketamine as a treatment for her daughter, and then they're also accused of trying to basically, yeah, he's not very linear. Again, I think this way. This is how I think. I think of all of the nebula of thoughts, but I know in order to make a good stream for you guys or to get my point across, I have to condense all of that, put it in a timeline. That's why I have my murder board most of the time because I think in all of these like, "Oh my gosh, don't you remember when this guy did this and he's such a douche and oh my god, what a gas bag." And all this other things, but that's why I have to do the murder board because I can think all of those things, but to make it you know, a cohesive story for you guys and to make it understandable, I have to make it a thing. So this guy, again, this might be his style, but it's a bit hard to follow. So I'm hoping that maybe the story will come out a little because he didn't get to the dad, he didn't get to the brother, it was all over the place.
Ketamine internally. Plus, you got to give more to kids than you do to adults. Plus, she was on this medication for about 14 months. And so there's tolerances. So the way the anesthesiologists do it, which is the way all anesthetic is done, is that you titrate up. You start on smaller doses virtually every time, and you increase until the patient has a therapeutic effect.
Yes, it's just
taking them out
it's
of
the
the
non-mobile
pain. It's having
board
the
of
right
truth.
effect on
I
it.
have the smaller
There
mobile
is
board
no
of
evidence
truth.
anywhere that Maya Kowalski was ever in any danger. Maya Kowalski ever suffered any negative effect whatsoever. The evidence will show it is all speculation on what could possibly happen. And I believe the defense will present themselves as the saviors of this family.
What in the Ted Kaczynski are all these
I may not even
notes?
actually use it all. So we'll lay it out. We'll bring in witnesses to tell you about CRPS. We'll tell you witnesses who spoke with Beata on her descent to the point where she felt the only way to get her child out of there, the maternal instinct was to kill herself. Take herself out of the picture, daughter released. We'll present the experts on psychiatry, on ketamine, on the use of it. We'll have the doctor flying up, ketamine comes from Mexico. We will have
Medina, I think he was prepared. I think some people just generally think like this. I his poor, media guy is like, some people genuinely just think like this. They're much better off the cuff. They do tend to do this much better. It's just again, some people do much better like this. I just tend to think that I don't know. This person right here, that's Maya. That's the little girl who was held against her will, for, yeah, of course he was. But he's also, uh yeah. And he might be much better at opening and closing, or he might be better at cross and bringing up witnesses. That might be where he shines. This might not be where he shines. But this might be his practice. This might be his big case, his big fish, where he just, this is where he's going to show himself. Now, the lady or the young woman with really long blonde hair is one of the plaintiffs in the case. She is Maya Kowalski. She is the girl with complex regional pain syndrome, and it is her mother that they accused of having Munchausen by proxy. She is the one that they tried to convince had just mental condition. She wasn't in pain. She didn't have complex regional pain syndrome. She was, held in the hospital. They tried to do all sorts of tests on her and basically tell her her mother was trying to make her sick, make her feel pain, and it was all in her head. Just a lot of craziness. Yeah, it yeah, he's a little dingly. I hope he does better on cross, or maybe some of his other lawyers, 'cause I haven't been too impressed with the open, I'm going to be honest with you.
Psychiatrists who have studied this will have the actual therapist at the time. You may actually hear from some of the doctors from the outpatient part
But she
of
didn't have
Johns
it.
Hopkins
That's
and
the
some of the
problem, is that she
people
was
that were there at the
accused
time
without
who agreed to testify.
evidence.
So we'll do our very best, and we'll try to introduce video and audio and
Put it
photographic
down.
evidence to document every single element of our case. So Nick sort of served as my
Did he not
walking,
take his Adderall this morning? Because
laptop computer,
seriously, he has,
reminding
like,
himself not
Post-it
to
notes.
forget.
Good God. Okay, as a double, triple type A person, the fact that he has, like, 27 different notes, 5 notepads, like, something what in the Ted Kaczynski are all of these notes? And like the 7, just for the love of good Lord, 7. What in the 7 is going on here? We've got, like it's good information, but he's got it's it's his note taking that I find issue. He's got, like, pieces of paper with 7 notes on 'em. He's, like, looking through Post-it. Sir, you had, what, like, 3 years to write down on, you know you had some time to figure this out. Good lord, sir. Imma need you to get with Alienware Man. I'm sure he could have made you a PowerPoint for the love of Cheetos. And yeah. Look, and someone had a really bad humidity hair day. It's Florida. We're not judging, sir, but you're wearing a
Pretty much to
mask.
tell you. And you've been pretty patient here listening to all of this. It's an emotional case. What we will do is try to bring you together.
Okay, guys. Well, this has been a pretty long stream, and I think Sal is having something with oh gosh, Farrell, I believe. I believe Farrell. So go see him. I am going to get off here. I'm going to continue resting. So I will be ready for you guys tomorrow. We will have newsy news. I believe both sides have rested. So we might get we might get whatever Law and Crime shows us. Or we might pick up this case. I'm not quite sure what we'll do. I will let people use the mask. I'm more making fun of his Florida humidity hair because good lord. Uh Florida and humidity and curly hair. It's just a terrible thing. But that was the plaintiff opening. He's a little scattered. I hope that maybe his talent lies in cross-examining and witnesses and all of the other stuff, and really letting these stories come out themselves and guiding the witnesses or asking the right questions. But his note-taking bothers me on a Oh, they are? Awesome. Okay, so then we'll get them Wednesday. Then we will be on Verdict Watch. I will be joining Nicholas, from noon to 2 every day this week to go over kind of the Delphi case starting from the beginning, so we can kind of get a handle on everything since he's not been into the case, so he can kind of get an overall view since this case is all the crazy and you have to go through all of the rabbit holes. We need to get, a kind of good idea of what this case is. So I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for Newsy News with Mo and Fry. And then I will go to whatever case happens to be up if they have the Gareth Purse House footage up. If not, then we will have this up. And thank you for mods and chats for joining me. And if you have any questions during this trial about CRPS or anything that I can sort of add my flair to, please, I will try to answer them. And remember that I believe Sal has a stream coming up. I know that I think he is joining Farrell for something. I am sorry, I'm still having kind of a floaty time, so I know that they have stuff coming up, and this one a little longer than it was supposed to, so please support them. Have a wonderful day, have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and I will see you bright and early on Monday. Have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.